Live.
Okay, welcome everybody to the Town Board meeting of Tuesday, November 13, 2018. I'll shut off my phone, just reminded me. And I'm going to start off with some quick announcements. Small Business Saturday is Saturday, November 24th. So it's a great day to shop local. We have a lot of events coming up at the Newcastle Historic Society, holiday events, tree lighting. Well, first of all, we have the Chapel Orchestra is performing at Bell School. This is all Saturday, December 1st, from 3:30 to 4:30. And we have a crafts workshop at the Greeley House from 4 to 6. The tree lighting is at 5 o'clock. That's all on Saturday, December 1st. And that same weekend at the Horace Greeley House is the Northern Westchester Artists Guild Art Show. And that's both Saturday and Sunday. And then we have the third annual Wine Around Town, and that is Friday, December 7th. So, and that's pretty much it for my announcements. I know Lisa's going to talk about some of the great events coming up at the Chaplin Performing Arts Center.
So, as Rob mentioned, there is the Northern Westchester Artists Guild reception, November 17th. That is right before the Dar Williams concert, which is also November 17th at 8 p.m. The reception's 5 to 8. I think there are maybe 60 tickets left to Dar Williams, so we would love our hometown girl to sell out. So if you don't have tickets yet, and you can go online at Ticketmaster, just search for Chappaqua Performing Arts Center, you can find those. November 26th, 4:30 to 6:30, we're having a musical theater technique and audition prep workshop. Join Tony Award winner Lindsay Mendez of Carousel, Wicked, Godspell, and Grease, and Broadway star Derek Klena of Anastasia, Wicked, and the Bridges of Madison County to learn about music theater technique and audition preparation. That is very exciting, and there's going to be a Q&A afterward for parents. December 1st, if you didn't see them last year, is this on? Yeah. From 8 to 11, it's Saturday night, What Fresh Hell podcast. Two moms who are very funny in comedy talking about motherhood, parenting, and being women in today's world. It's very funny. I bought 10 tickets, so I hope to see you all there. December 8th from 4 to 6, we are again bringing back a movie screening of Elf. So bring your kids, and it should be a lot of fun. And think it's going to be interactive screening like Rocky Horror Picture Show, but with snowballs. And on December 18th at 7 p.m., there's a benefit concert for the San Miguel Academy of Newburgh, and our very own Frank Shiner and Vanessa Williams will be performing a holiday performance at Chapac. So I urge you to get tickets to that. All of that is online.
Ivy, did you want to talk about this book that we have on our?
Sure. So, as everyone can see, I have a copy of El Defo by C.C. Bell, which is a book that everyone in Chappaqua schools has been given a copy of. And we are doing a community reads program called Chappaqua Reads, Chappaqua Includes. And throughout the month, there'll be various activities taking place at the schools and as well at the libraries. And so I encourage everyone to go home and chat with your kids about this fabulous book. My daughter was reading it tonight. She just got it in her class this afternoon. So thank you to CCSD and the library for co-sponsoring this.
Okay, so I'll just quickly bang through my supervisor report. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Let's see. My first thing. I thought my first thing was relevant. No. Okay. I'm going to give an update on the Streetscape project real quick. The rain continues to slow our progress. Whoa.
Sorry.
But,
I'm so excited about your update.
So, yes, it's very exciting. Granite curbing was installed on North Greeley from Bishop to the post office, and the sidewalks at that location are being poured this week. Granite curbing has currently been installed on South Greeley from Washington, which is the library, to Woodburn, which is where the Shell station is. And next week, sidewalks will be poured at that location. We are not pouring sidewalks throughout the whole town. We are pouring sidewalks at those two locations. We are also installing granite curbing up King Street, basically from Great Stuff and past the Horace Greeley House, which is where the project stops. And we will not be pouring sidewalks there. We will just be putting in asphalt as we have on all the other sidewalks, and then we'll be doing those sidewalks next spring. As far as the final drainage work on North Greeley, from Lower King to Maple, we were able to start work again at that location. There was a conflict with some conduits that Verizon has going into the Verizon substation, whatever they call it, and Verizon couldn't move those conduits for us, so now we're going under them. We've encountered a lot of conflicts. Most of them were able to move the pipes, but this one we couldn't. So we're going under it, then we'll be finally done with the drainage, and that'll be the last of the infrastructure. And then we can focus entirely on the streetscape, and we are shutting down operations starting Thanksgiving to New Year's. And even after New Year's, there's very limited stuff we can do because of the weather, but we will try to do some stuff like electrical wiring and things like that. So that's pretty much it for the streetscape. Our new community sign was installed. That's across the street from the Shell station. That is a great collaborative effort with the Greeley Boosters, Chappaqua Central School District, and the town. We all three came together to make that happen, and there's two community signs there. One will be used by the town, one will be used by the school district, and that'll be getting power soon, and it'll be just another way to communicate with residents. And let me just mention one quick thing about downtown Chappaqua. Last year, the town adopted our comprehensive plan. Over the past year, we've held several meetings with our planning board to discuss an important goal of the comprehensive plan, which is creating a new and more vibrant mix of retail and residential uses within the hamlet. Part of the goal is to provide housing that meets the needs of young people and older adults. We'll be conducting another joint meeting with the planning board this Friday. And now we'll be taking, one of the steps we're taking with the planning board on this Friday, we'll be discussing an RFP to redo our zoning in downtown Chappaqua to make our zoning consistent with the comprehensive plan that was passed last year. So that's something we've drafted the RFP. We'll be talking with the planning board about it on Friday, and hopefully we'll get that RFP out. So, these are all good things for the town in downtown Chappaqua. As far as Chappaqua Crossing, real quick, let's see. We're waiting for power to be brought to the traffic light on Roaringbrook Road. Everybody can see there's a traffic light there. There is no power. That's why it's not on. Con Ed is supposed to be bringing power to that traffic light. Con Ed is also working with Altice and Verizon to remove the wires, and we can get rid of the two poles that are in the middle of the road. We hope that to be done before the end of this month. They got their permit for 117. That actually just came in today. So work will start on 117 on the state road. Some of the work has already been done on Chappaqua Crossing property, but now they're going to be starting it actually on Route 117. Whole Foods is currently scheduled to open on December 12th. We'll see if that actually happens. And we're also working on some improvements down by the railroad, and we just recently sent out an RFP for our own traffic consultant to study some of the recommendations for down by the railroad. So that's the story with Chappaqua Crossing. Lifetime is planning to open at the beginning of January 2019. And that's pretty much it. As far as, I'll just say real quick with the preliminary budget, we had a presentation this morning, it'll be online. It was taped. We're looking at an average increase of $62 for the average resident. And our public hearing is scheduled for November 27th. Rob Deary, our comptroller, will be here at the public hearing on that date, and we plan to vote on December 11th on the budget. And that's pretty much it for me. Now on to Jill Shapiro for her administrator's report.
Thank you. Just to piggyback onto what you said about the 2019 preliminary budget, both the 2019 preliminary budget as well as Rob's budget presentation have both been posted to the website. There's a new banner that goes across the top of the website. You can access it there. The Route 120 sidewalk, the one that runs from Elm Street up to Grafflin School, just about done. Again, weather permitting. There is a last catch basin that has to be installed, and then the remaining granite curbing and concrete will be poured. And that will close out that project. And again, if it just stops raining, we will be able to finish it. And just a recap that last week we had a joint meeting with Pleasantville. Both the town Newcastle Town Board and the Pleasantville Village Board had the annual joint meeting at the water treatment plant to get a state of the plant update from United Water, Suez, which is the private entity that's been running our plant for the past 10 years. Their contract for that operation expires at the end of this year, and we are exploring our options to determine the most efficient way to run the plant for the next term. That's it for me.
I had one more thing I wanted to mention. This is actually very relevant for Newcastle residents. So, as we all know, we went to single stream recycling, 3 years ago, was it? We went to single stream 2 or 3 years ago?
No, it's more than that.
4 years ago.
More.
Well, I hope everybody's gotten used to it and feels comfortable with it, because we're going back to dual stream. And the reason we're going back to dual stream, unfortunately, is because, and this is a problem that's happening throughout the country, you can Google this. China used to accept basically all the recyclables, and they're not accepting it anymore. And now, these companies are collecting all these recyclables, and quite honestly, they have nowhere to put it. Nobody's taking it, and there's a real problem going on throughout the country. And so by going back to dual stream recycling, at least we know there's a market for the paper, and it's not being commingled with the plastic, which is not being recycled at the moment. So, and then we get actually money for the paper. We were losing that money when we went to dual stream recycling, but we were saving money by reducing our garbage waste that gets hauled away. So it was actually a net savings for us. But now, with the increased cost of taking the recyclables, we'll actually be able to recoup some of that money by separating the paper and then getting money back for the paper.
It was a significant increase to maintain
Yeah.
single.
Yeah.
Right, but I just want to clarify, so that there still is a market for plastic, the aluminum cans and glass. It has to be clean, though.
Right, that's right.
And so we will still be recycling those things, but we're gonna make an effort to make sure that the stream is clean. Our recycling stream is clean.
I like that.
And we will be able to cash in on the paper, as you say.
Right. So that's going to be all part of an education campaign. You'll be hearing a lot more about it over the next 2 months, not just that we're going back to dual stream, but also to clean up the recyclables. Because if they're not clean, it's not going to get recycled. It's going to end up in the trash. So that's very important, but you'll be hearing a lot more about it. There's a change that we just recently agreed to last week after studying the issue for months. And again, if you Google it, you'll see that municipalities all across the country are dealing with this very same issue. Okay, so that's it for the supervisor's report. So now we have, well,
Should we jump to?
we have a presentation. And so I assume Michelle Berliner and Christy Solstein are here. And, okay, come on up. I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. I'm going to read something that Mike Jalillo wrote to me. I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but he's not here, so. So what? Well, the mic is good so people can hear you at home. But I'm going to read a little something here. So Mike wrote me this email last week, and he said, I think the absolute world of these two women, Michelle Berliner and Christy Solstein, they are truly role models for all of us and remind our townspeople every chance they get. They started Stayin Alive after both their husbands were critically injured during Hurricane Sandy in 2012. Their husbands only survived thanks to a daring rescue by the North Castle first responders. And after spending time thanking them, they started this charity called Stayin Alive. And the last thing I'll say is, and I said it already, these women are role models. They are the best of the best. They are eternally grateful to our first responders and are continuing to say thank you in big ways. And with that, I introduce you, Michelle Berliner and Christy Solstein.
Here, where?
Well, the mic is so people can hear you at home. So if you can speak in front of the mic,
Taped.
you could also hold it if you feel more comfortable, whatever you want. But-
We're good.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Michelle Berliner. This is Christy Saltstein, and we're the co-founders of the charity Stayin Alive. We're honored to be here tonight to present grant awards to the Chappaqua Fire Department and the Chappaqua Volunteer Ambulance Corps. As you briefly heard, on October 29, 2012, both of our husbands, Andrew Berliner and Doug Saltstein, were involved in a terrifying accident during Hurricane Sandy in Armonk. Prior to their accident, we had no idea how vital the jobs of the Northern Westchester first responders were. We knew that first responders were important, but we certainly had no idea that they will go the degrees that they'll go to help others in need. The Westchester EMS, the Armonk Fire Department, North Castle Police Department, and North Castle Highway Department all worked together so that our husbands could reach an ambulance that was waiting several miles away but couldn't reach us. Christy and I had been good friends for a while. Our families were close and our children are similar in age. But it's really difficult to describe the bonding that occurred on the ride to Northern Westchester Hospital and in the many days after the accident. We knew that we wanted to thank all of the people that were integral in Andrew and Doug's rescue. So many people had helped us. And in the weeks following the accident, we met more people from other towns who not only knew what had happened, but who were also out there trying to get them rescued from afar. And this is how the concept of Stayin Alive was born.
It's hard to believe that 6 years have passed since our lives changed. Little did we know as we arrived by ambulance at Northern Westchester Hospital, and then later sitting in the ICU waiting room at Westchester Medical Center, where we would be 6 years later. What started as a need to give back and say thank you, initially through a dinner and active participation in awareness events with the Armonk Volunteer Fire Department, evolved and grew through the next 6 years. The more we talked to the first responders in North Castle, the more we heard the same thing. They needed funding for equipment to get their jobs done, to help save lives. Our first Stayin Alive event was in 2013, a 23-person team of runners participating in the Westchester Half Marathon. We raised over $20,000 for the Armonk Volunteer Fire Company and specifically wanted them to use it for equipment to help save other people's lives. This team of runners evolved into a bigger concept as our understanding of how far our fundraising efforts could reach. This was not just an issue in North Castle. All of the departments in Northern Westchester needed financial support in order to provide the life-saving services we all depend on when needed. Do you want to do our video? It might be a good time for that.
Do we think?
Yeah, okay. Oh, it is working. Great. We have just a short video we're going to show you. It's a little, gives you the history.
The accident took place on October 29th of 2012 during Hurricane Sandy. My friend Jory brought my husband Andrew back to the house. Jory went upstairs and called 911. The dispatcher finally said, "We're doing our best. We will get there. We know that they're out there."
The amount of trees they had to cut through and get around and just the hazards.
These guys worked tirelessly and they saved our husband's lives. Andrew remembered Tommy. He remembered his voice. He remembered his eyes. And when he woke up, one of the first things he said is, "I have to find that man."
I vividly remember thinking, this is a true test of the system working. All of these departments responding in exactly the way they're trained to respond. The goal of Stayin Alive charity is to raise funds so that we can supplement these various departments with items they need that their budgets don't allow them to buy. If you're unable to participate but would still like to volunteer or donate, please feel free to reach out to us at stayinalivecharity@gmail.com. Sixth anniversary of our Stayin Alive 5K Fun Run, which is our main fundraiser, coming up on May 18th of 2019. To date, we are very proud to be the face of over $150,000 given in grants and gifts to first responder units in Northern Westchester. We're giving over 11 grants this year, so we're very excited about that. Which leads us into why we are here this evening. We are very excited to present the 2018 Stayin Alive grant recipients.
From your town.
Yes,
So,
from your town.
the first one is going to the Chappaqua Fire Department, and we have Chief John Medeiros here. And they received a multi-force door, which is a forcible door entry stimulator, and they use it for training. So, very excited. Thank you for all that you do. And the second grant we're giving out today is to the Chappaqua Volunteer Ambulance Corps. And we have First Lieutenant Joseph Gentilesco, Captain Peter Markin, and Second Lieutenant Kate Clough here. And we helped them to purchase a Lucas 3 chest compression system, which helps to improve outcomes of sudden cardiac arrest victims. And just to note, this is the second grant that CVAC has gotten. They also got one last year, so they've received $10,000 in grants from us. So congratulations.
thank you all for your time, and I'm just going to ask you, one more time, that's May 18th, 2019. The race is at 8 a.m. We would love to see you join us, run, walk.
We're in Armonk, so it's
We're in
not far.
Armonk, volunteer, any way you can support, we greatly appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Let me just add, before you guys leave, we have a newsletter that goes out to 8,000 people every week. So as the date approaches, maybe like April, whatever, early April, send something over to us.
Absolutely.
And we'll keep it in there every week until the event.
Wonderful, thank you for your support.
And a very vibrant social media too,
Great.
Facebook.
Great. Thank you.
Traffic on Moms. It's great. It's wonderful. Very vibrant.
So Rand has
Super.
a presentation as well. It's in his computer.
Thank you. So, okay, so now we move on to,
Technology,
we
we're
are-
almost there. We're really close.
yeah, so,
To
pass it on.
public comment, new business.
Right.
Budget presentation. this
So we're
morning.
gonna do now public
No
comment, new
sound.
business, but if you're here for the leaf blower legislation, we're gonna open that public hearing, and so you'll speak then. This is for anybody who has any other public comment, new business, other than something we're having a public hearing on. Usually nobody speaks, I'm just saying. Let's keep that tradition going. Okay, so now we move on to our public hearing. So we are gonna continue,
I make a motion to continue the public hearing, right?
yes, it's a
Second.
continuation of the public hearing regarding a local law, go ahead, I'm sorry,
I was gonna say on local law concerning motorized blowers.
yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we're going to first start with a presentation from Rand Maness, who's a member of the Sustainability Advisory Board, and then we're going to open it up to public comment. I have a clipboard here with names, so I'm going to go in order when we deal with the public comment, but then if anybody else wants to speak, that's okay. We don't have a time limit when you speak, but, just try to be conscious of other people and, whatever. So, in the meantime, Jeremy's going to sing a
Sing.
song.
Any requests?
How do we sign up on the clipboard?
You can sign up here, come on up.
You should probably pass it
Want to
around
pass it
the room
around
one more
again?
time.
We can-
Yeah, well, just come on up, it's right here. We're just gonna need that pen
Oh,
back.
there's a lot of names on that clipboard.
Yeah.
The night is early.
The night is young.
Yes.
So no question. There we go. You too. We could always, we just put this, use this, whatever. Okay. All right, you ready, Ram? We can start.
I'll take this out, it'll be a little bit easier to do both of these. So, oops,
Oh, no.
No, here we go.
technology, isn't it wonderful?
A lot of people.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'd like to just make a very brief presentation. It probably took us longer to set up the technology and the presentation's gonna take. But I'd like to remind us why we've come to this point in time. I've been seeing a lot of the discussions that are going on, and I feel there's some information that's not out there for everybody, and it'd be nice to just summarize it all. Once I have my phone stopped ringing on me. So leaf blowers contribute pollutants in 3 ways. The one that we're probably most aware of is noise. When a gas leaf blower is running, it's creating a sound that's greater than 90 dBA. 90 dBA is probably equivalent to a jet plane taking off, or it is equivalent to a jet plane taking off, and it's above the OSHA safety levels. OSHA safety levels are about less than 85 dBA, and at that point, it's a 4-hour exposure at most for a worker. We all know that our workers, when they're blowing leaves, they are using it for much more than 4 hours a day. They're using it probably for 6 days a week. More importantly, or not more importantly, but equally, it involves you as a resident. You get disturbed from what you're doing. It's one of the problems. The second area is the carbon offset. The carbon offset is probably a very important item these days with what's going on. We know that climate control is out of hand. We can see that in the fires in the West. We can see that in other places. And we know from studies that have been done that using a gas leaf blower for half an hour is equivalent to driving a Ford F-150 from here to Alaska. So you can imagine how many gas leaf blowers are being used in the community. There's 6,100 homes. If each one only used it every other week for half an hour, it's something like going to the moon and back 77 times. A lot of polluting comes from that. And then the last area that it pollutes, and not many people are aware of this, is as you're blowing up things off the grass, off the bed, the garden beds, and off the hardscapes, particles are being thrown into the air. Particle pollutants cause airborne debris. It is hazardous to the young and to the elderly. And for those reasons, for these 3 reasons, we feel that gas leaf blowers need to be limited in their use in our town. So I've been listening to a lot of discussion that's going on, and I hear that one of the big discussions is, well, it's going to cost me more money to not use gas leaf blowers during the season. And remember, this ban is really not for this time of year when we need to clean up leaves. They're allowed to use leaf blowers. This is for the summer season when leaves are not falling off of trees in any great volume, and we're asking that it be limited during that point of time. So why wouldn't my landscaper charge me more? Well, if you look at the way a landscaper charges you your charge, he's basing it upon his labor costs. Labor costs will do what, gardeners will do what you ask them to do. We know that best practices for maintaining your lawn is to mulch your lawn, leave your grass clippings in place, and not to blow your beds out, your garden beds out. Leave all nutrients, might as well leave it in place. These are best practices. Scott's Lawns Care recommends mulching, and there's a reference here to where you can find that article. Better Homes and Garden also tells you to leave your beds alone, not to blow things out of your beds. So if we ask our gardeners to shift the amount of time that they spend on your yard so that the cleanup is not cleaning up your lawn, not cleaning up your bed, at least not to the level that they do now where they mow your lawn and they follow it back with a leaf blower. They clean up your beds and they follow it back with a leaf blower. Instead of spending that time doing that, let's spend the time cleaning up the property, doing the walkways and the driveways. So you'll be able to almost double the amount of time doing that, which should be an adequate amount of time to do the amount of cleaning that's necessary on a walkway or a driveway. So time spent on your yard will be the same, and therefore what they charge you should be the same. Brief example, if you mulch your lawn, if you maintain your garden bed, a landscaper is usually on your property for 25 minutes. 3 workers working for 25 minutes comes out to about 75 minutes. Currently, they're spending 35 minutes caring for your property, 45 minutes cleaning it up. If we shift where they clean up, you're going to spend the same amount of time. If you want to see it in more of a matrix, here's how I've come to those numbers. It's basically just shift the time for cleanup from lawn care and garden beds to walkways, spend 40 minutes on walkways, and they'll be fine.
Rand, where did you get these numbers?
these numbers came from another organization that does, analyzes the use of landscaping for average properties. That's where I got them from. And all we did was shift the time it takes to do cleanup. So, why do I believe this is true? Well, if you look at the nearby town, Irvington passed a law a number of years back that asked them not to use leaf blowers to do mulching in place. And this is the response that the gardeners in the area said. I'm not going to read it all. But Sean Ryan from Ryan and Ryan Landscape said, I started mulching leaves last year and saved $400 a week in overtime, plus more than $1,000 a week in tipping fees. If you listen to Anthony Volpin, he says time savings and money savings that results from this method, the method being mulching leaves. And from Tim Downey from Aesthetic Landscaping, you can perform the same autumn cleanup in the same or less time as the regular weekly grass cutting, and that's it. So that's where I find my basis to suggest that there is an alternative to what we do now. Landscapers come and they blow everything. A lot of what they're blowing is not good for us. One of the other concerns I've heard about was why exempt certain operations? Well, the exemptions that we see in the ordinance that's being suggested really are focusing on properties with large grassy areas used for organized sport. It's not meant to be for the town and cleaning up the front yard of the town or for other operations where it's not going to affect the outcome of sports, organized sport. So it's really for properties that are using this on a full-time basis. It requires specific maintenance to maintain the sport's integrity. We're not looking to change the way a golf game gets played or the way a softball game gets played or soccer. So the exemption is really meant for the rec fields, and to do otherwise would compromise the sport, but we feel that we do need to set those aside,
With the exception of the schools.
with the exception of the
With the
schools.
exception of the school district, which has requested an exemption for all school properties and
Right.
operations.
But we feel that that should still be limited just to their rec fields. There's no reason that in the front of the school that they're blowing in front of the children that are there.
Bless you.
So, that's my short presentation. I don't want to take much of the time. I just wanted to bring up those points, and I'll turn it over to whoever else needs to speak.
I also want to mention that, let me go talking to the mic, we didn't technically talk about this, but, it wasn't my intention to close the hearing tonight. I think everybody's in agreement. We're going to be tweaking the legislation. We've talked about already, tweaking the legislation based on some preliminary comments we've got. So we're very open to the public comments, and, we do plan on tweaking the legislation. So this public hearing, we're not doing this right now, but it's going to be adjourned to December 4th, meaning that this is not going to be your only time to comment in person, and you could always submit written comments. We've already received a ton of written comments for both sides. So now we can go and people can speak. So, again,
And it's also before, one of the things that we've asked for from the Sustainability Advisory Board is to compare, relatively speaking, apples to apples. What kind of power are you getting from some of the electric blowers? That aside, what are the costs if we went that route to compare unit per unit so that you can have an idea of what that means? Also, beyond Irvington, are there any other landscapers that have opined on this issue? And then there's been some concerns about home values and whether or not any realtors, well, it's certainly not scientific, it's not a number you can say it's $5 or $10 or this type of power. Has there been a complaint that you've heard from any realtors in any community say, hey, this is impacting adversely our home values? So there's still a lot of data that you're going to bring back to us before.
Well, and I would add to that, I would love, and for those of you who are speaking tonight, I would love to ask all of you this too. If we could have conversations with our landscapers. I've talked to mine, but I'd really like this to be, and I know Lisa's talked to hers and a couple others as well. I'd really like this to be a data-driven conversation so that when we're talking about increased costs or decreased costs, they're based on the fact of having had those conversations.
yeah. And again, everything in the legislation can be tweaked. Some people are concerned about the complete ban on leaf blowers and going to electric and things like that, and, we hear your concerns, so. Your comments are welcome. We have 17 people sign up. The more can speak, so I'll just ask people to, try to limit their speaking, just to be respectful of the other people. The number 17th person on the list, and there'll probably be more people. So, what happened? Did I say something wrong?
Let's start.
So, Bob McNamara. Come on up.
I do my own lawn, so I'm speaking as an individual, but I have had the discussion with a landscaper who helps me out when I'm not available. I agree with the timeframes as far as the May to September, limiting some of the leaf blowers, especially the louder, the gas ones. I do question, though, the complete ban on motorized during that timeframe, because I don't know how you clean decks or patios or walkways without, some kind of a motorized. I have an electric one that I use, a corded electric one that I use to do my driveway in the summertime. I don't need to do it a lot, but I think, the time frame to say no motorized at all is a little bit overboard. The main complaint I have is 2021, the ban of gas. As Jill mentioned, we could get the concrete done if it would just stop raining. I have a sloped property. I mulch as often as I can, but sometimes the leaves don't cooperate. They come down in 3 or 4 days. There's just more than you can deal with, and you have to blow sometimes. You have to do it around the rain. I happen to be retired, so I'm able to work those schedules out, but I cannot see getting my lawn done, and I don't have a big property here. I don't see doing it if I couldn't use my gas blower. As far as some of the numbers, the science that's being used to support this, I'm not sure where anybody went to Alaska in a Ford 150, but I've done some research on the internet, and the most substantial study I can come up with is from a DEC website that did equate an hour of a gas blower with an 8-hour sedan, and not favorably, but no trip to Alaska, no trip to the moon, and the study wasn't even specific enough to say whether we're talking about 2-cylinder or 4 cylinders, and there's a great deal of difference in the efficiency. So, and as far as the list of exceptions, I mean, it just goes on and on and on in the study, in the report that I saw of the draft proposal, which leads me to believe, I think some people must realize it's going to raise costs if they had to go to alternative means. I could not find on the internet today alternatives for a decent-sized gas blower. A corded one, they say, limits 100 feet. If you have any more than that, you shouldn't use them on an extension cord. So I don't understand why, if we're really serious about environmental things, this laundry list of exceptions. So the main complaint I have is the total ban in the fall for fall cleanup, and just, minor issues with
Summer, you mean?
some of the others.
The total ban in the summer, what are you talking about?
No, the
After
total
20
ban in
after
2021
right.
of the gas.
Got it, right.
The timeframes that you're proposing, and as I understand the current proposal, that ban is there, and the long list of exceptions, they all still be allowed to use gas.
Right.
I don't quite get that either. So, thank you.
You can,
Thank
if you
you.
could, I would love to see that DEC study that you
I'll
can,
send you a link to it, yeah.
to the town board, that'd be
But
great.
it also, again, doesn't give you any statistics. It doesn't, you can't find out whether they're talking about, 2 or 4 cylinders,
That's
which,
the big thing, whether
which
it's
is-
2 or 4.
yes. So it's hard to get those numbers and to understand. And even when you asked the question, Lisa, about where Jeremy got his numbers, he didn't say where he got his numbers. He just said, I got the numbers from somebody else. I don't know where he got the numbers. Yeah, so thank you.
All right, thank you. So the next name is Gurney, and I can't really read the last name. Christina, you're not Gurney.
Mine says Jerry.
Oh, Jerry, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Didn't have my glasses on when I wrote my letter.
I mean, there's two R's and one R does look like an N, I'm just saying. But,
Thanks for the opportunity. I used to live in Millwood, and I got rid of all my machines and whatnot just because I just
Can you just
wanted
talk
to.
into the
Oh.
microphone so people at home can
I used to
hear
live in Millwood for about 30 years, and I got rid of all my machines because I just wanted to work in a different environment and take care of my lawn differently. But at this point, I live in Old Farm Lake, and it's 44 acres, and there's 174 units, okay? The main thing, if you start on top of the roof, we have people come in that rope themselves and weight themselves to walk around the roof and use leaf blowers to clean our roofs off and to clean our gutters. If they have to do it with 40-foot ladders, it's going to be very dangerous for them to try to clean those gutters any other way. Another thing is all those leaves, we have beautiful trees and all that acreage which the town allowed to develop, and it would be like become a fire hazard because we have all this debris around. Another thing would be we have a lot of roads. All of our curtain drains and all the pollutants that are going to go into them from all this runoff would be another problem that we'd have to face. And where would we get the manpower to clean this place? Okay? I noticed that we do have exemptions as well in here for different parties, country club or something like that. Are we talking about, golf and stuff like that? Well, Old Farm Lake, I'm speaking as an individual, not for all of Old Farm Lake at this point, even though I'm on the board there. We have a clubhouse. We have tennis courts. We have basketball courts. We have exercise rooms. We pay for all this. So are we exempt? Okay, because we are a club? Or if somebody incorporates themselves as a club, are they going to be exempt? Okay? It's impossible to do the kind of work in this unit and the intensity and the closeness of the units any other way. So on the other hand, in Millwood, it was quieter from airplanes. Right now, I'm over in an area where at times 15 minutes I hear an airplane. And their overhead, the noise, the pollution. I can imagine the pollution from one airplane that would equal an enormous amount of leaf blowers, okay? So basically, I think I'm glad that we're going to have more time to talk about this because I think there needs to be more reaction, and I thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Sorachi. Trying my best.
Good evening. I responded to your email. I'm Tom Sorachi. I'm a Newcastle resident. I'm also an officer on the board for the New York State Turf and Landscape Association. I've been involved in environmental science and education for over 40 years. And I've objectively looked at the studies that were presented by the board member, and they're highly subjective, and it's a lot of arbitrary science. I welcome the opportunity for more discussions.
Sir,
I
just
am a
by
resident.
talking, just so people can hear at home.
Yeah,
Just
I am a
thank you.
resident, and I can make myself
You can
available.
hold the mic and walk around if you want.
I have a bad cold. I don't want to handle the mic.
Kind.
Would you like me to read the letter I sent you into the record?
Well, no, if you sent us a letter, it's already in the record.
But I think if
If you
there's
wanna read it, you
factual
can,
information
but,
that you think it's important to help educate from your point of view, the public, I think that you should pull out some of the highlights
Well,
that
the
you think are
county
good
of
to-
Westchester has a list of compliant leaf blowers that contractors are currently allowed to use. And I would suggest that we all look at those before we make a decision ultimately about what we can and what we can't do. Some of the equipment that's utilized in the industry to clean leaves is an oil mix, and that will send out more emissions than a simple gas-powered machine. And I think we should be able to discern one from another when we ultimately make a decision. The backpack blowers do send out more emissions. It's a fact of life. But there's nothing that's going to substitute a gas-powered blower at the moment. I've dealt with and speak with on a regular basis equipment manufacturers, equipment representatives, and the engineers that design them. There's nothing on the horizon that's going to substitute a leaf blower. I don't know if anybody here subscribes to a lawn service, whether you're using chemical treatments on your lawn. If you leave clumps of grass there, you're not getting your money's worth. They have to be cleaned up. The chemical will be absorbed, and it will dissipate. It will be ineffective. I think what we have to be concerned about is our children with pathogens and ticks. There's been a lot of mold-related asthmatic issues, and we all know that we're infested with ticks around here. Isn't Chappaqua and Indian water and woods? We've got all of it here. You know what, I don't want to take up a lot of time, there's a lot of people here, but I'm going to make myself available to the board and anyone else that wants to have a discussion. If you'd like, I'll give you my cell phone number, and you can give me a call. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Boyd?
Thank you. Hi. I am
24/7.
not full of all the numbers, but I am a volunteer in town. And we have a town park near Susan Lawrence, the Vest Pocket Park. It was taken over by the town this year, and the garden club was asked to maintain it. So they came to me, and I maintain it with another woman who helps me. And we can spend 4 hours, 5 hours in peak time. And so I load my car with a weed whacker and a backpack blower. But, and I go down, and we do it, and we enjoy it, and we hear the comments from people in town, and it's a wonderful little place. And then I put my backpack stuff away, and I go home, and maybe I have this wrong, but I'm gonna go home and put my backpack blower away and not be able to maintain the standards that I would like in my own home. And I just feel that some of my personal choices are being jeopardized by laws coming into my backyard, basically. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Michael Daurio? Mike? I just hear him? I just heard you. Are you gonna pass? What about your wife? No, she's on the list too, that's what I'm saying.
I'll say something.
What I don't understand is why the town,
Beverly Daurio.
why the town wants to make it more difficult for people living in the town. We're taxpayers, and yet this ordinance is okay for the town park and the school and everything. But the rest of us are put in this position we can't use a leaf blower. So that's.
Want me to answer the question, or is it? I think what we're trying to do, I don't want to speak on behalf of Sustainability Advisory Board, but I think what we're trying to do, and what other towns have tried to do, is we understand that people have a right to take care of their property. We get it, but we also all breathe the same air. And some of us are very concerned about the environment, and we're trying to take steps to preserve the environment for future generations. So this is.
Well, I don't think blowing leaves is gonna cause
We
a
could
problem.
debate how to do that, and I get it, but I think
I don't
that's,
think
you asked
so.
why we're doing it, and that's part of the reason.
I disagree with you.
That's part of the reason.
That's
I
all.
think this is an initiative that the Sustainability Advisory Board is moving forward for several reasons, whether you agree with them or not, related to reducing carbon emissions, and I think a lot of people are bothered by noise. I think the air pollutants was a thing that was discovered in the process of their research.
And can
Quite
we just
sure it's
clarify,
known.
the exemption for the town was really for fields and for areas where there would be a safety concern for kids playing on the fields, as opposed to parking lots or other areas that maybe, are not safety concerns.
Right.
And also municipal operations, so.
Right.
Right.
Paving, things like that.
So, like I said, there's very good chance that a lot of this will change, but there are some safety concerns that need to be addressed, and there's also, questions about whether technology is going to be where we think it's going to be in the future. Some of our crystal balls don't work as well as we'd like them to. But whatever, that's the point of this public hearing. But that's the reason we're engaging in this. As much as we like getting 1 million emails and public hearings with 1 million people show up, the bottom line is what we're trying to do is something that we think is helpful for the environment. And we're trying to, if we do something, we actually want to do it where we can do it in a way that satisfies as many people as possible, with taking into consideration as many concerns as possible. So it's not a perfect process, but that's what we're trying to do. So the next person on the list is Peter Lucia.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I feel kind of awkward with my back. Can I take this like over in the corner and so I'm not? Is this okay? I just have
As long as you have the mic, it's okay.
Okay. I'm Peter DeLuca. I have an organic landscape business for over 35 years in Bedford, New York. We mulch mow. We look for environmentally sustainable processes. I've been mulch mowing. Now, when you mulch mow, the gentleman talked about a debris field. When we mulch mow, we've got a cloud of dust, mulch mowing. These leaves are being ground up. So when you use a blower, you still have that cloud. So the elimination of the blower isn't going to do it. Your proposed law, as far as I know, is arbitrary and capricious, which is a violation of Article 78, the New York State Civil Law. Manufactured gasoline blowers meet updated EPA standards. My blower has a sticker on it. It's got an EPA sticker. Like automobiles, we lobby the industry, and the automobiles get better mileage. As the new ones come out, they're cleaner, they're quieter, and our equipment manufacturers are doing that. Why the local government has to put restrictions on us as business owners and taxpayers is beyond me. The manufacturing of these batteries is banned in the United States. It does not meet EPA requirements. Batteries are manufactured in South Korea, China, Africa, and South America. Again, my gas blower has an EPA sticker on it. Companies strip mine other parts of the world to obtain the heavy metals that are needed for these batteries, causing environmental disaster. I skipped a page here, sorry. Have you considered the working environments of these mines and the people that work in these mines in these other countries? You think of, you see a news expose where they're manufacturing clothing in a sweatshop, and they talk about the children and the working conditions. Who do you think is working in these battery manufacturing plants and these mines? Children, slave labor, it's disgusting. The environmental disaster left after the mine closes. The mines you strip mine the land is destroyed for 100 to 150 years. It looks like the surface of the moon. So where's this electric for all this equipment coming from? We've got Indian Point, where we have spent nuclear rods we can't get rid of, and coal. According to my NICEAG bill, that's where the electric's coming from. That's not environmental. Electric blowers should be a consumer choice, not a mandate. As a consumer, business owner, employer, taxpayer, I should have the right to choose the best equipment that's right for me and my clients. When I replace equipment, it's at the end of the equipment's life. Years ago, we were mandated to buy new blowers, so we had perfectly good equipment, and all the landscape industry in Westchester County had to go out and buy new blowers. That was environmental? I don't think so. What happened to the old blowers? Well, they were sold, and the illegal companies are still running them. So they don't meet the EPA regs, they're outdated, and they're still out there. So forcing us to replace equipment under the guise of being environmental, not very environmental. When I buy a truck, I'm looking for the best mileage. My fleet trucks get 24 miles to the gallon on average. Now we have the health concern of the electric blower. These battery packs are on your back. They're on your central nervous system. They create an EMF. What are the effects on your central nervous system to have an electric magnetic field on your brainstem and your spine? Are there any studies? I haven't seen them. We talked about recycling, it was brought up. We can't recycle. China won't take our stuff. Where do you think these batteries are going? They're going to India in heaps. They can't be recycled. When they can, the chemicals and the process to recycle these batteries in this mandated equipment is disgusting. It's more polluting, and there is no upside to these batteries at this point. I think in the future there will be, but we're not there yet. And to force people to buy this is disgusting. I operate a legal business. I'm overregulated. I work very hard to make conscious decisions regarding the environment. More regulation just leads to more of my rights being taken away. Let's enforce the laws in place. Let's get rid of the illegal, noisy, polluting blowers. More time should be spent speaking to neighbors who use illegal landscape companies running illegal blowers. Current laws should be enforced. How many noise ordinance tickets have been actually issued in this town? I know in Bedford it's 0, and that's where I operate. So they complain about these noisy blowers, these outdated blowers, but they have never once cited the people or done anything about it. So instead, we just keep adding and putting more restrictions and forcing us to buy more equipment. At this time, an electric blower isn't for me. Considering the toxic pollution created manufacturing the batteries, the disgusting mining process, harvesting the heavy metals, electric equipment is not clean or green. Under the proposed law, no economic or environmental studies have been done or completed. Country clubs, schools, and towns are exempt. The law as proposed is arbitrary and capricious and in violation of Article 78 of the New York State Civil Law. Thank you.
I want to just very briefly respond. I think some of the things you said certainly has some value, but there also has to be some general credibility. And what I mean by that is we can sit here and be stagnant, or government can be stagnant at every level and say, you know what, I referenced this last time, you can smoke on the airplane, you can be a much younger person and buy cigarettes, you cannot wear a seatbelt, you can text while driving. There's a lot of things that the government at different levels ultimately does for the benefit of the people. Sticking our collective head in the sand like an ostrich is not going to help us. And all of those things, well, maybe not environmental necessarily, are done to benefit. There surely needs to be a balance, and that's why we're listening to figure out what that balance is. But to do nothing and ignore issues because it's inconvenient also isn't the answer. And if that means that other communities or we as a community are one of the first to do something, then so be it. But again, we're listening to how we can make this work. But to say that because there is mining in a foreign country that it's not up to what we believe the regulations should be in terms of employment, well, then I'd encourage you to get rid of your cell phone that you use because there's a battery in that, and the laptop that you use because there's a battery in that. So we just have to have credibility in our arguments, and I'm not saying your whole argument is not credible. What I'm trying to say is there's a balance, and we have to figure out what that balance is, and that's why we're listening, but we can't be stagnant. That's also not the answer.
I'm not asking you to be stagnant, but what I am asking you to do is enforce the current noise ordinances, enforce and eliminate the noisy blowers that are illegally run out there every day. I see them.
And your comments, many of your comments are fair.
And that would appease a lot of the people, because these noisy blowers. I do a lot of gardening, where I'm out in the garden. I'm not running a blower all day. I don't want to listen to them either.
Okay, the noise is one issue. Let's go on to the next person.
Thank you.
Dave, I can't, Lowry? Lowry.
Good evening, Honorable Board. My name is Dave Lauer. I'm from North Castle Landscaping and Tree Service. I also am the Arborist Liaison on the New York State Turf and Landscape Association Board of Directors. I may live in Armonk, but I work in Chappaqua. I maintain your fire department's property. I do mulching. I mulch. Yes, I do. Okay, now whether it's a proven fact that it works or not proven fact that it doesn't work, the science isn't in yet. But when you do mulching, you need a blower. Because the gentleman said, leave all the leaves in your shrubs and everything else. Well, ticks, if you understand their life cycle, Like to stay in the shade, the cool of around your foundation in your pachysandra, under your shrubs where they're out of there. If you have the leaves, you're going to have multiple tick problems. Okay? Number two, the idea of mulching is to blow the leaves out of the beds, grind them up, and now you, as said before, you have a cloud of dust and you've got this pile of ground up leaves. You need to then blow them back into the beds, mix them in with your mulch so that you can, they'll compost down, okay? When I'm at the firehouse, it's difficult to keep the grass off the sidewalks and the pavement. I can't sweep it up. We'd be there all day, all right? It's cost prohibitive. We need to be able to use a blower. Now, whether you limit it to, I'm not against electric blowers, okay? Because it's a tool designed to help us out and try and help in a situation with your noise. But if I had an electric blower during your May to September, I can still clean up and not make that much noise, not put out the pollution from the exhaust, okay? It's a little bit tough. I mean, the blower was designed to decrease the cost to the end consumer for what the work we're doing now. If you cut all the blowers out, what's gonna happen is if we have to hand rake, number one, where are we getting all the labor to do this? And number two, instead of 3 guys on the job, you're gonna need 5, and instead of being there 25 minutes like the man said, you're gonna be there for over 5 or 6 hours, because some of these properties are anywhere between 1, 2, 3, and 4 acres that we work on over here.
So what do you, so let's assume for a second that you were allowed to use only electric blowers from, let's say, May to September, and then gas blowers from September through, the fall season.
Right,
You
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, but I'm glad that's getting my next question. You would then need to have both electric and gas blowers.
Right.
Don't you
Right.
think we'd hear from people saying that?
I already have electric
Well,
blowers.
I'm just saying you, but let's say other landscapers.
Well, if they go by most of the zoning laws that are in the local municipalities around us, electric blowers are allowed, where the gas aren't. Scarsdale's one.
So you're
They'll
saying
let
most
you use it.
landscapers have both?
I don't know if most do. Some of them are not really interested in buying it, and some of them do not belong to the association, so they don't come and get educated. We had a meeting in July, where a gentleman came down and presented all the different electric tools that you can use and discussed it. And if these people don't come and be educated by the association, they don't know, and they don't want to listen. I hate to say it, they're stoneheads. I'm a horticulturalist, and I believe in education is when it stops, you might as well put the nails in the box, okay? You gotta continue to move on. But a lot of the science that I saw over here on this video is not the science that I'm hearing from the manufacturers, the Westchester government, about what's going on. This is where where did that come from? What association put that out? We don't have a name. We just have, I got it. Okay, so I have a hard time with that. Because I know there's a group saying, love it and leave them. Grind them down, forget the blowers, this, that, the other. The science on the ticks on the mulching isn't in yet. They're still working on it. Cornell is still working on it. Whether grinding the leaves, you'll still have that high tick population, or you won't have the high tick population, because they like leaf mold. But if you leave them intact underneath your plants, and in the shade, close to the house, you're inviting the tick to just move in with you.
Mr. Lauer, if I may.
Yes.
You mentioned that there would be an increase in the number of hours that it would take you to work on a property.
Yes.
If we were to go from the ability to use the leaf blowers during the summer months to not using them at all and using rakes. Do you have an estimate in terms of dollar, like a percentage increase in terms of
I can
costs? Will
I
there
can
be an
use,
increase
I
in
can use,
costs?
I can use this as an example. I gave an estimate to one of my snowplow customers. He asked me, to measure out the lawn. I measured out the lawn and we discussed it. And he didn't do anything with me on the lawns, but I do plow for him. But when this ordinance was coming around, he asked me, what do you measured my lawn, what do you think it would take? Instead of spending 2 to 3 hours, working on his lawn with 3 men, I would need 5 men, a minimum of 5 hours just to rake leaves.
Yeah, but you're allowed to use them in the fall. You'd be allowed to use, let's forget about banning the gas.
Okay.
Let's just
Here's
forget
the
about-
problem I've got. You're using September 30th, which most people do. I've been blowing leaves since August due to the drought that we had in June, and then the torrential swamp that we've had July, August, and September. The trees are under so much stress that they're shedding leaves early, and have been, and some still have leaves on there. So the timing I can work with, but I still need something to be able to work with something in the tail end of August and September when we have a year like we have today.
I'm only gonna go out of order because I know you're part of the same organization. You wanted to say something?
Perhaps as part of our ongoing discussions in the future, I will look into bringing in an equipment manufacturer and/or an equipment dealer to discuss the electric opposed to the gas leaf blower.
Okay.
Perhaps they could give us an idea of a ratio of how many contractors and how many leaf blowers are out there in the region, opposed to backpack blowers, push blowers, and electric blowers. That may be helpful to the committee.
Okay. All right.
Thank you
Any
very
other
much.
questions?
Not at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Tony Oliveri.
Just want to say one thing, because these guys covered a lot. I have a brother that's had the business for over 40 years, and I help him run it. And he went out and bought 3 of these still backpack blowers, the commercial grade. And they had the 800X this year. It's the first time. And I just want to mention one thing. All these new blowers have catalytic converters on the mufflers, just like cars. And the emissions are, they're approved by EPA. And also, the noise level is so much less. On this gas-powered 2-cycle, it's 78 decibels. And the battery-operated is 75 decibels. So it's not much greater. And I tell you, we don't use big blowers anymore. These blowers do a great job.
Right.
When we do mulch too also. So either way, it's not going to affect our business. Either way, just because we mulch, we just need it for driveways and in the summer months, the patios and stuff like that, decks.
Right. Well, maybe the solution is rather than just, banning gas blowers in 2021 with the expectation that the technology will be there for electric, we could maybe also consider as another option mandating gas blowers that have catalytic converters or.
Well, the new
they'll
ones
exceed,
are
right.
all going to
And
have
that gives
it.
landscapers a couple of years to upgrade their equipment.
The noise level is it's much less now.
Mr. Oliveri, if I may ask you, how frequently do you replace these machines? So what's the life cycle of a machine?
My brother tries to change them when the new ones come out, every year, 2 years.
Every year to 2 years?
Because we don't use the big blower, we don't.
Yeah, I had asked the same.
I actually looked that question up online just for my own edification in terms of what is the average replacement? What
Yeah.
is the lifespan of a machine that's used on a commercial
Yeah,
level?
we use them
It's like
constant in
3
the
years.
fall.
Yeah, that's it.
They're going steady, so.
So if they have to replace it in 2021, it's not a big deal. They're probably going to replace it anyway.
Yeah, but.
What depends when you bought it.
We bought an electric
Right,
one.
even if it's 3 years.
We bought an electric backpack for the firehouse, for the new rescue. And they're good. I mean, for what we use it for in the fire department, but to do a lawn, you can't do it.
What's the lifestyle is not the right term, what's the battery life of continual hard usage of that electric?
45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
And hard meaning pushing a lot of leaves and debris.
No, that would be like just blowing the sand and the road debris off like a driveway, like I used it down in Scarsdale. Okay, just to blow it off. You got 45 minutes, and it was gravel too.
And then how long does it take to charge it? You have to use it for 45 minutes.
Excuse me?
How long does it take to charge it?
Recharge the battery.
3 to 4 hours.
You would have to have some kind of inverter in the truck or something to charge it all day. Have spare batteries.
The DOT hasn't come out with actuator.
Let's try to keep,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, let's try to keep it.
That's another thing.
Okay, well, we're having an open conversation.
That's all I just wanted to bring up.
That was helpful, thank you.
Yeah,
They
thank you.
covered a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Larry Wilson.
You don't mind if I take the microphone?
No, please do.
My name is Larry Wilson. I'm from the New York State Turf and Landscape Association. I'm a landscaper and a volunteer. I volunteer as the Government Affairs Chair for the New York State Turf and Landscape Association, and I'm a past president. The New York State Turf and Landscape Association has been bringing education to the professional landscapers in Westchester County since 1958. So, we have been to many communities to talk about these leaf blower bans. And this is the first time, of course, that we heard about a mandate for electrical equipment. We commend your effort to improve air quality. And I don't think that you should put your head in the sand, as you had said. But I think you're coming at the problem with a jackhammer. There could be a balance. There could be some middle ground here. And I look forward to December 4th, and I again commend you for
And we are, that's why we're
going
having
forward
these
with the
conversations.
dialogue, because that's very important. If you're a mechanic and you need a hex head screwdriver to remove a screw, you can't use a regular screwdriver. And the leaf blower, the gas-powered leaf blower, is a tool. And I have both electric, which don't really work so well, to be honest with you, and I have gas-powered leaf blowers. I talked to folks from the Nassau-Suffolk Landscape Gardeners on Long Island. They had a field test recently where they brought out the electrical equipment, and they brought out the newest gas backpack blowers, and they tell me that the steel gas-powered blower was quieter than the electric blower. So the information that you have, especially the DEC website, the DEC got that information from the EPA and the California Air Resources Board, and they say that that information is outdated already. That was data for maybe 2008 or 2010. So you should really, when you start talking about facts and you start throwing facts around, this gentleman that made the presentation, you should really, check those facts and take a look at them before you, put them out. For instance, there was a quote there from Anthony Volpone. Anthony Volpone is a board member of the New York State Turf and Landscape Association, and he told me that those remarks were out of context, and he didn't say it. And I can bring Anthony Volpone here to tell you that. So, please, you should really look into, what you're putting out in the public domain. So we look forward to December 4th. One compromise maybe that you may consider is the use of one backpack blower per property during the summer months. When we trim shrubs, a lot of times privet hedge along a driveway, it leaves a big mess in the driveway that you cannot rake up. And if you try to sweep it, you can't even effectively sweep it. You have a leaf blower, 5 minutes, you blow the little leaves back into the beds, it's finished. So that might be a compromise that you would consider. So I thank you again for your due diligence and for your time, and I look forward to, and the New York State Turf and Landscape Association offers, any input that we can. We'll always attend these hearings, and we'll always offer any information that we feel might help you. So thank you.
Mr. Wilson, are you a Newcastle resident?
No, I live in Yonkers. I'm sorry, I didn't make that clear.
No, I asked that question because this is a town that really prides itself on our environmentalism. And I just want to make the point that while I appreciate the arguments that are being made about the cost and the machines, and I think it's worthwhile for us to take all of this information in and to consider it and to continue to have these hearings, you made the point that we're taking a jackhammer to this issue. And I think you're right. I think we are taking a jackhammer to this issue. At least for me personally, the effects of climate change are ones that warrant taking a jackhammer to this issue. I read I read the UN report that came out in October last month, and the effects of climate change are going to be felt in 2030. That's 2 years after my daughter graduates from Greeley, and we're not talking about a couple of warmer days over the summer. We're talking about famine. We're talking about food shortages. We're talking about mass migration. We're talking about cities underwater. I think it's an immoral imperative for all of us to
All because of the leaf blower, I'm sure.
Certainly not all because of the leaf blower. However, I do think it's important for us to do what we can, and not only to open up our checkbooks and purchase things like electric shuttles, which is another initiative that we've considered, but also to think seriously about our practices. And that's what we're doing here. And nothing has been decided yet, but I just want to make the point that I think it's important to consider the larger ramifications of what it is that we're talking about.
That's a point well taken, and if I may respond, we have a loosely organized task force of landscapers that live in Newcastle and work in Newcastle. And what we've done is try to outreach to the customers, the people that live in these properties that have acreage and, of course, pay exorbitant taxes. And they're incredulous. They can't believe that we're going to be going after, this mammoth job with a little egg beater. So again, you have to understand the task. You have to understand what we're asked to do by your constituents and your taxpayers. And somewhere, again, I apologize for the jackhammer analogy, but I think you know what I'm getting at, that there should be a balance, there should be a compromise.
Well, I actually would like to get, I don't know who from your organization, your contact information, because I have been a little bit skeptical, skeptical about some of the numbers that have been presented. So I've also talked to my landscaper. I have 17 acres, 6 acres of which need to be maintained. I have 2 guys for 4 hours. I mulch in place, I do the minimum possible, no pesticides, nothing. I'm a clean green machine as best I can. I compost, I bring the stuff out, I use that in my soil to augment it. But I do know that my costs will go up if there were no leaf blowers. But what I would really like to do is I think that it's important that we differentiate between the best practices towards a sustainable environment versus, just allowing people to run rampant and not just pollute with noise, but pollute in other ways. And I think it would be really helpful if there was maybe the SAB and you sort of sitting down and coming down to like the 10 questions. What would be the best practices for a sustainable lawn care that we could then use rather than saying no motorized leaf blowers at all? Because I know that when you are in a town where something like 70% of the properties are over an acre and like a good 40% are over 2 acres, it's a burden to the homeowner to have to maintain that. Raking is an impossibility.
Yes, but also you have to realize an acre is not an acre.
Depends on the place, but I'm just saying, it's something that I think we need to be cognizant of. Every single one of us has a different home. Some people have flat lots, some people have steep lots, some people have wooded lots, some people are open in the field lots. It's all different. But I would really like to be able to have a discussion, sort of put down what those sustainable practices are and sort of compare those practices against what we're recommending. And I don't want it to be electric is like a million times better than gas. If it's like taking twice as long to blow electric, even, and it's 5 minutes to use gas. I mean, I know that I was told my driveway alone would be twice as long with electric. So I would like to have sort of a conversation that's not just about, let's ban leaf blowers, but I'd like to really have a conversation that moves us forward towards what are the best sustainable practices that can be adopted, maybe with or without legislation, but sustainable practices that are advocated for in the town of Newcastle. And I think when this first topic came up, started to look at it, and I started to look at some of the tests, especially on golf courses, where they went and did side-by-side comparisons, and I'm sure the technology's evolved.
Right.
So I would really like to have that. So if somebody could give me a card or something like that.
I certainly will, and I have to commend you for the spirit of offering this, the possibility of this discussion. Of course, we'll participate. We feel we have a lot to offer, and I thank you, for making that suggestion. You rely on us to be involved.
Let me add one thing, there is a compromise, and it's not a question of whether we take a sledgehammer or we take a small little scalpel. Thank you. There's a compromise, and, somebody mentioned about the cars you drive and the EPA emissions. Well, the car manufacturers didn't really do that voluntarily, right?
No, not at all.
And, exactly. So, and by the way, we're not gonna really save the environment here in Newcastle, but what we can do, and somebody also mentioned about, where do you think the electricity is coming from, coal? Well, actually, no, here in Newcastle, we're using green electricity, okay? Now, people could opt out of that, but as a town board, that's a default, and maybe some people don't agree with that, but that's the way it is in this town, because we're committed to the environment. If somebody wants to opt out, God bless them, let them opt out. But we're using green energy, and what that does is it creates a market for green energy. And if other towns in Westchester do it, then these energy companies realize that there's a market for it. And if they're telling me that it's leaf blowers that have catalytic converters and are less noisy, and if we mandate those in a certain year, we're creating the market for that. And if the next town does it, all of a sudden that's what the manufacturers are going to start selling. So we can actually make a difference here in our little town by using a sledgehammer, but it's a compromise with the technology, working with the landscapers to come up with a solution. So it's not an either or. It's coming up with a solution that everybody can live with, that, that's pretty much, that's it. Everybody can live with, and using the technology that's out there and getting the manufacturers to realize that this is what communities want. And if we can lead the communities and other communities follow us, then that's the goal,
I agree that, all of these new technologies should be looked at and perhaps even tested like they did on Long Island. So, I think that there's a lot to learn really about this technology.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, David Klein?
Hey, guys. I'm a resident of the community. I've been here for 15 years, and I am wholly on board to finding sustainability efforts. And I also support absolutely some restrictions put on gas leaf blowers. My concern, what kind of got my ire up, was the extreme end of the proposal, which was the complete ban on all leaf blowers throughout the summer seasons. When I built onto my house, I installed electrical outlets at various points around the house so I could plug in my 100-foot cord and go out and leaf blow. However, I also have a landscaper, but I leaf blow because I love gardening. My landscaper does not take care of my flowers, he doesn't plant my flowers, he doesn't tend to them in any way. I do that on a regular basis. And I go out there with my little electric leaf blower, and I clean up after I do all the clippings of the hedges and so forth and so on. And I feel it would be really an unnecessary infringement on me using a device that has really very little impact on anybody, especially given that the noise that's made by this device doesn't really affect anybody. And I'll tell you that the information that was given there is not completely accurate. 90 decibels is not a jet engine. It's 150 decibels at a distance of 25 meters. But the leaf blowers, the loud leaf blowers, the gas leaf blowers, are 105 decibels at the leaf blower itself and 78 decibels at a distance of 15 meters away. So the electric leaf blowers have a decibel level of 64. which is significantly lower, and that is the best of electric leaf blowers. I'm talking about small, plug-in, it has a big difference. I would like some consideration. I understand, as an affluent community, we predominantly hire landscape services. And that is why I think this issue comes up here, because we are often annoyed by the sound that's being made by so much of the leaf blowing. And we're also aware now of the emissions that come from these. But there are individuals, like myself and the gentleman that first spoke here. It affects us too, the individuals here. And I am one of those individuals that, again, would be very willing to get on board with restrictions for the sake of the environment. But I just want people to consider that the kind of sledgehammer approach to remove all of the use of any type of device be considered carefully, because I don't think it's necessary. That's what I'd like to say. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judy McGrath?
I just first want to state a few things about, when looking at this issue, how important it is that I think you get the proper facts. And it's disappointing to me to see some of the information that has been presented by the Sustainability Board, which is incorrect and non-factual. And this is something that you're using to base your decision on. I think it's very unfair to compare Newcastle to the town of Irvington. Irvington has an area of 2.8 square miles, compared to Newcastle, which is more than 23 square miles. Irvington has a population density of 1,600 people per square mile. Newcastle, 780 people. The sizes of their, and I don't have the exact number or the size of their lots, but there no way any comparison to compare them to the property lot sizes here in Newcastle. So I'm sorry, I think it's a very unfair comparison and not even factual to use Irvington to Newcastle. I also want to reiterate that there's only 3 towns right now in Westchester that completely ban both electric and gas, and that's Hastings, New Rochelle, and Rye. The other towns, the 9 other towns, ban only gas-powered leaf blowers during the summer. Not one town has permanently banned fuel-powered leaf blowers. Further, in an email from Supervisor Rob Greenstein to a Newcastle resident, Rob stated, "The current legislation does include a ban on gasoline diesel leaf blowers beginning May 14, 2021, as we've been advised that, based on the current trend in technology, in a few years, electric leaf blowers will be suitable replacement for gas-powered ones." So this comment proves to me...
Judy,
No.
if you're going to read that, please read the next sentence.
Well, you said that you'd be willing to look at other...
I said we're open,
I know,
like I said
I know,
10 times tonight,
I know, but
is that we're welcome to
the
feedback and nothing's
Sustainability
been decided yet.
Board, but the Sustainability Board is presenting electric leaf blowers as a very viable option.
My next
when
sentence
they're
is
not.
that we're open, we're researching
Well,
and open to...
I don't know if they're not.
Okay,
I don't
well, let
know
me
if they're
finish,
not.
please.
I think that, it's not a tack to sustain SAB. They
No, I'm
do a
not.
tremendous
I'm not.
job.
I'm just saying that let's know what the whole facts are. It's not. Electric leaf blowers have limitations when compared to gas-powered leaf blowers. That's all. I mean, I think many people have gotten up and already discussed this. So basically, current electric-powered leaf blowers are not sufficient substitutes for fuel-powered leaf blowers. And I believe the town board is being influenced by and ready to support a hope-for technology that does not exist at this time. And who is advising the town besides the Sustainability Committee? And I appreciate the volunteers on the Sustainability Board. I appreciate that they're volunteering, but what are their specific qualifications on being experts and making these recommendations? And again, the study that was referred to tonight about the leaf blower being the same as the trip to Alaska is an unscientific study. It was done by a car company that basically compared 2 leaf blowers to 2 cars. It is not a scientific study. So it's disappointing to me this is constantly being held up as a fact of saying how bad powered leaf blowers are when it's not a scientific study. I would like to recommend, if we are concerned about emissions, I would love it if the Sustainability Committee would focus on maybe the increased airline traffic. I think we have a lot bigger problem with the number of airplanes flying over our town than with leaf blowers. Maybe, maybe, I know we already have a committee, they can work with that committee. Maybe they could even work with the school district in reducing the number of students who are driven to school. Currently, only 40% of high school students take the bus, and these buses are not even full. In total, the busing company only needs to provide buses for 70% of the students in the district, because a large number of students are driven to school. And these buses aren't even full, and these are numbers I've gotten from the school district. So, I mean, there's some other things we can look at here if you want to look at other emission type of problem.
What does that have to be one of the other?
It doesn't, I mean, but,
One of the- I just want to
it doesn't have to be one or the other, but I'm just saying there's other things to consider.
I understand, but thank you. I understand that, but I want to make it very clear to a lot of people. Some people have been sending us comments, nasty comments that basically say, you people, is this all you have time to do and things like that?
I'm not saying that.
No, you're not saying that, but I just want to make it very, very clear. We're working on a ton of issues, and this is one of them. And the Sustainability Advisory Board likewise is working on a ton of issues, and this is one of them. So it's not either or, and if you have an idea that you think the Sustainability Advisory Board should do, I would recommend that you join their board and take up the initiative. Because like you said, they are volunteers, and somebody has to do it. So if you have an idea, I know you cheered very loud, if you have an idea, then volunteer for the Sustainability Advisory Board and help them make it happen.
Jude, I think you made some good points. Your question. Jude, I think you made some good points, but what I wanted to respond to in part is, we can only control so much. The town can't control and manage your personal automobile use. I can't control, as the town, the school district's bus usage. It's a separate entity. As much as we want to see limited air traffic over Newcastle, we can make recommendations and have our voices heard, but that's not ultimately the town's domain. And the reason why, and we're grateful you're here, despite the back and forth, is because nothing is perfect and nothing will be perfect. We try to have to balance it. So your comments are well taken, and it may well be that the technology doesn't exist to ban everything. The gentleman talked about catalytic converters. I mean, there may be alternatives too, but there is an issue that if we can lead, and among other communities, it ultimately, that trickle, in my personal opinion, becomes more of a torrent and change can happen. And I agree with what Ivy's sentiment before. I have young children. It doesn't matter if you're young or old. There's real issues coming, whether you want to accept it or not, in my view. Not you personally, collectively. But we're listening. But there's going to be change. And I think that's a fair statement. Change is coming. How much that change is, and you're right, the facts may be wrong, and there may be competing facts in terms of what was presented. I don't know, I haven't seen anything to the contrary. The change is coming, and we should work together to figure out how to best effectuate it. So, go ahead, I apologize.
And Judy, just the SAB does bring things to us for us to consider, but the reason we have these public hearings also is because we want to get all the facts. This is not one-sided. We want to hear from everyone. And for instance, the proposal that everything be banned after 2021, I think, at least I have now come to the conclusion that the technology is not up to where it needs to be now, and maybe it will be in 2021, but maybe it won't be in 2021. So I would advocate, for instance, that the law potentially be changed to say, we'll reevaluate this in 2021 and then see where the technology is at the time. So I think that we are taking everyone's comments under advisement, and, people write to us, people show up here, is not falling on deaf ears. And I think everyone can say we're really listening, and we're looking at all sides, and we're doing individual research, and we want to hear from experts on both sides of this issue, and that's kind of where we're coming from. I don't think anyone up here has made up their mind yet.
And by the way, to that point, I think I've mentioned it. If anybody's really been listening to what I've been saying, you could pretty much figure out that I too am not in favor of the ban in 2021. I've mentioned that we don't have crystal balls, and some people's work better than others. So the fact is, that's the point of the public hearing, like Lisa said. So in that sentence that you didn't read was really the most important sentence in that email, was that we're listening to the public comment and nothing has been decided yet. So, That's why you can't,
I don't,
that's the most
no,
important thing.
No, that, to me though, what was important, it was an admission that yes, electric power leaf blowers are not comparable to gas powered leaf blowers, because as that was being presented basically in the last meeting on October 23rd.
Yeah. and-
Okay,
and-
that was what was being presented, Rob.
And
All right?
and that's
So-
right, but the point is though, we listening to other comments, and since October 23rd, we've heard a lot of comments, and that's why the sentence that we're opening to comments and nothing has been decided yet is applicable, and it's applicable on October 23rd, it's applicable today, and it'll be applicable at our next public hearing on December 4th.
I think the one thing that's coming through is I think it's really important that what we have is accurate facts in order to make the best decision for the town. And I think that there needs to be confidence in the facts that are underlying the decision that's here. And there's been several things that have been brought to light that have perhaps maybe changed my thinking about the practices to be sustainable while at the same time being efficient. So if one is noise, there could be decibel level restrictions as long as that was realistic. If one is, no gas powered in the summer months, but then in the fall to go forward, whatever it happens to be and how that's crafted, it feels like there is support among the landscaping community as well as the SAB to maybe perhaps address the way that we have, we're approaching landscaping. I think there is a way to do it that I think that everyone could get behind. That perhaps an outright ban of all leaf blowers starting in 2021 and kind of mandating perhaps electric leaf blowers, and the model they may have may not be as good as the model that a gas-powered model of current technology. I mean, I think it needs to be a phased approach, and it's been really eye-opening, and I'm really glad that this is all out in the open in the public and that we get to hear the things. And I felt the same way about some of the comparisons of the town. They're tiny little towns with quarter-acre lots. You could have an electric gas blower and plug it into your house.
Well, other resolved issues I think you also need to keep in mind and that we also need answers on are, there's been no information given on the possible increased costs by the town and how those costs will be covered. The law accepts Newcastle rec areas and snow and paving operations. What work done by the town is not exempt? How will that work be done, and how will that increase town costs? 2, there's been no information given on who is enforcing this law. Is it the police or a town employee? Will there be an increased cost due to enforcement? What are the amount of the fines? Are they as written in Town Code 90, or are they something else? 3, there's been no explanation given, maybe some now tonight, on why country clubs and schools are exempt from the proposed law. The Sustainability Board presentation focused on leaf blowers causing breathing issues, especially for children. So why are schools exempted? Why are the rec fields exempted where the children are? Are there any other entities that could be exempted, like churches? What about Chappaqua Crossing and other retail areas? What about townhouse and condo complexes? You had one gentleman talk about that tonight. Questions that haven't been answered that are important to the community, and there has to be reasonable answers to these things. Finally, I know you'll probably disagree with me on this, but I believe the town board has not been transparent in presenting this potential leaf blower ban to the community. Only limited information has been available in a few town newsletters. And even worse, only in the town newsletter that went out this past Friday, after 3 o'clock, before a 3-day weekend, did it finally state that there was a possibility that fuel-powered leaf blowers were going to be permanently banned. That was the first time it was ever mentioned in a town newsletter. And that is ridiculous.
That's not correct.
No, Rob, I reviewed every town newsletter. You could,
Judy, I can send you my last.
but you've never
newsletter
said,
had a
that was the
link-
first time that you
had a
said
link
permanent
to-
ones
that
were
had a
going to be
link to the
banned.
legislation.
But that was the first time you put it in the little thing, that you didn't have to click through and try to read the legislation. What I don't understand is,
Every time it's been on, when it's been
No.
when it's been on a prior hearing.
I
and
looked,
also
I've been looking for
The
it.
agendas are blasted with every single newsletter.
I think Judy raised some very good questions towards the end there, genuine questions, but to assert that we are not being transparent lacks complete
I mean, look at the room.
intellectual.
You know how many emails
Well, you know,
we
yeah,
got?
well, okay, but do you have people I've
Can I
emailed?
protest this?
to
I've been
assert
looking
that-
for this for days. I was not able to find it on the website. maybe other people that often use this website can find the information. I did find the draft of the law. I did not find, when, where this was going to be discussed. It only came on today or yesterday.
Right, and
We
but it
can't, we
has-
can't deliver, we have a newsletter, goes out to everybody's house.
On
You can
social
subscribe, you
media.
can subscribe to it to social media.
But Rob, in the newsletter-
We can't force you to read it, but we also can't knock on everybody's doors and say, hey, there's a public hearing coming up.
I think it's fair that perhaps the intent of the law
It's
and the
not-
changes, like normally when you
not
do an
impossible.
executive summary of something, which kind of more clearly outline the intent of the law and the specific changes that would affect the residents, and have it spelled out in plain English, to read the full law, click
Here.
here to a PDF.
6 points, I got it right here. This is all you needed to put. But this was never in you might mention the leaf blower thing, but you never mentioned all the main things that it meant.
Fair enough,
Okay,
that's
so,
fair.
here's my example of what it could be.
Well, these are your main points, but
If
on
you
the
wanna
other
add
hand-
more- if you
on
wanna
the
add
no,
more
on
to-
the other
I
hand,
mean,
I could just
they
link-
summarize the
I could just
law.
link to the legislation and let people read it, because rather than me picking and choosing
But
what
I
I
don't
think is
think
most
anybody
important.
has the patience or even,
That's
the
their
mindset
responsibility, it's
to
not
look,
ours.
to read
to tell you the
through
truth, no one thinks.
25 pages
And the other-
online.
and
With all
Well,
respect, it's 3 pages long at top.
Yeah.
It's a small piece of
It's under-
legislation.
Still.
I didn't even think it's 3
And this is the
pages.
second public hearing that's going
To say that we're not transparent, I don't know.
Yeah,
if
it's-
most of
let's
it-
keep it
Let's
moving.
move on.
I think it's totally fair that we could be clearer.
But it's also fair not to say it's 25 pages when it's actually 2
I'm
pages.
just saying is, most people don't wanna sit and read through legislation. They really don't.
Then you
should be
can't
made
be
simpler.
then you can't be
finally-
upset that
But Judy, you do bring up good points about things we should make sure that we are looking at in the legislation. I, for one, am a little troubled about the school district being completely exempt. And I have asked questions about enforcement, but I think that these should be further spelled out, and we should make sure to look into them too.
Finally, I just want to state again that, as people have talked about here tonight, education is important. And I think that the town and the Sustainability Board can go along and make a very good program of educating people. I just think it's wrong to be mandating things to us. And, I'm sorry, I'm still angry about how my electricity was changed without my permission.
Okay.
It should, excuse me,
You're entitled to, Judy, you're entitled to your opinion.
I would have loved to know it was coming and have a choice. I was just told after
You
it
do
was
have a
done.
choice. You do have a choice. You can opt out.
No, but no. I would have rather had the choice to opt in.
Okay.
I'm a homeowner, I know, I'm a
We could have done
home,
that. We decided not to.
I know. And I said I disagree with it. Again, with this type of legislation, educate people, let people decide to opt in. It doesn't mean that people aren't going to opt in, but it's like heavy-handedness, and I think it's wrong.
Yeah,
So
with
thank
with the environment that we are in right now, unfortunately, some of us, and not everybody, some of us feel that we actually have to take big steps unless we are not leaving the environment that we want for our kids. You may not agree with it, that's fine, but some of us feel that we have to take steps like that.
Okay, well, can we just say one thing about emissions? In 2017, the US went down 42 million tons of our emissions went down 42 million tons of
We have
carbon
100-year
dioxide.
storms every 5 years now.
Rob, let me just finish.
We don't need to
But at
debate
the same,
climate
no,
change.
I'm not going to debate climate change. But I just want to bring up one other point. Between India and China, their emissions went up 212 tons, half of the increase of all emissions. So let's focus on India and China. Come on.
You
One
One thing I do want to actually ask a question, and I'd like an answer from both the SAB and from you gentlemen on the
Turf
side over here,
Association.
the Turf Association. I did
Industry.
speak with a few landscapers, and what they did tell me is that with the gas leaf blowers that they're using takes maybe, 20 minutes, and it's taking them 40 minutes, let's say, to mow a regular property, and that using gas mowers, and if they now have to mulch leaves and can no longer use the gas blowers, that it's gonna take them twice as long with their lawnmowers and the gas-powered lawnmowers to do the same work. And is that then saving us emissions, or is it increasing, or is that wrong and it's decreasing? I'd like to get information on that.
That's a highly subjective question, because each property is like a fingerprint.
Well, right, of course, each property is different, but I want to know just generally, is it going to require significantly longer time to mow an average lawn and pick an acre?
Specifically with regard to mulching, you're gonna have more particles flying around. That seems to be in the purpose of your legislation, it clarifies particles in the atmosphere. You're gonna have more particles in the atmosphere with mulching than you are with moving leaves that are not mulched or cut. Each property is a fingerprint. You're gonna be running a mower a lot longer than you will a blower and a mower together to get to that point. And then you still have to use a blower to move the leaves. So again, it's highly subjective. You know, I think an ongoing conversation is gonna be really productive, but that question cannot be answered in a white four-corner margin.
No, I understand that.
Okay, thank you. Next is Susan Muskowitz.
Rob, can I just clarify one thing? So this local law is part of Chapter 90, the noise ordinance, and it's enforced by the police. So
Right.
this is just one provision. You know, the
No, if you read, can I just say something? When I read it, I thought it said, police or, if you read I looked at Chapter 90, police or town employee. That's why I had the question. So you're saying that it's definitely the police?
Yes.
Well, also we have some civilian, the parking enforcement, I don't know if that
Yeah, and
means-
any designated
Right, it could be
employee designated by the police
The
department.
dog warden, these are not police officers, but they're part of the police department. Traffic guys, whatever, so. Susan Moskowitz, going once, going twice. Yes.
That was the best
Okay.
comment of the night.
Roger Bean, from Keenan Bean, no?
No.
Roger Bean, that's the person's name.
Roger.
No, his name is Roger?
Right.
Oh,
B-L-A-N-C?
Yes.
What's your last name, I'm sorry?
B-L-A-N-C, Blanc.
Oh, I'm sorry.
May it please this honorable board. My name is Roger Blanc. My wife and I have lived in Newcastle for 35-plus years. I really listened to Hala Makowska's comment that she has 17 acres, because we do too. And we have a couple of thousand trees. And a point, I sent a letter in which I suggested that when you're exempting things like school districts, you also exempt large properties, like 10 acres or more. For example, the electricity notion, it doesn't work. I'd have to have an extension cord of several hundred feet, which is probably not a good idea for a lot of reasons. And gas-powered blowers actually emit less noise escaping the property if they're inside a 17-acre parcel. We back onto the Whippoorwill Park, and then we back on a couple of other very large properties that are not occupied. And it's not just my property, but there are other large properties in Newcastle. And to have a regulation that's aimed at the 1 to 2 acre property doesn't make a lot of sense. If you're going to exempt parks, school, playgrounds, and whatnot, you should also apply that exemption to large, I would say 10-acre or more, residential properties, where you have the same kinds of considerations that motivate the existing exemption. And the other thing about your exemption is it rather strangely exempts things that aren't covered by the prohibition, like snow removal, water main break repairs, pothole patching or paving operations. It's rather strange to have an exemption exempt things that aren't covered by the prohibition, but that's a sort of a lawyer's point.
I was just gonna say, leaf blowers are used as a part of those municipal operation processes, so using a leaf blower to clear out the pavement before you fill in the pothole, for example.
To get rid of the debris. You're right about the large parcels. unless the reasoning is to exempt recreational fields, and, and then the question is, well, maybe we should just be exempting recreational fields, because we're doing it for safety, as opposed to the school and the town and country clubs. And we're well aware that exempting country clubs sends a terrible message, when really what we're thinking about doing is exempting golf courses and not country clubs. So, but I hear your point about the large properties as well. Jim Smith?
Thanks. Getting late in the evening here. I had an enormous amount of material that I would love to have talked about. I live at 72 Random Farms Drive. I write local laws for a town board, and I know how difficult this is. I have a degree in environmental analysis and policy and work for Al Gore. I know how difficult it is to affect environmental change. And I appreciate what the town's done in so many ways, but I am opposed to this law, and it's data driven. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this, and I would love to be a part of that conversation with the town. I'm disappointed in a lot of the facts that have been presented. Some of them aren't intuitively correct, and they're not. They really don't when you get into actual scientific studies that have been peer reviewed and talked about. I think the discussions tonight have been great, and especially probably some of the best environmentalists among us are the arborists, the landscapers. They appreciate and value our environment as much as us, and I think that dialogue is going to be really productive for the town. I'm not going to go on tonight, but would love to continue that.
But if you have other comments and you can submit them in
Yeah.
writing, that would be
I
very
would
helpful.
love to,
We'll make
yeah.
those part of the record, and we'll certainly review them.
Okay, thank you.
Particularly if you have.
Provide us your information, you have your number too, maybe someone can reach
Sure.
out to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And by the way, I'm just going to say this, and you're not going to see this one coming. I copied the entrance to your driveway. The rock pillars that you have at your driveway. If you ever come to my house, I have the same exact.
Well, they're great,
ones.
but when a
Because
FedEx
I saw
truck,
his, my brother
when
lived in
when the FedEx truck backed into it and knocked it over and we
I've
had
had
to
it
fix it,
happen
I
too.
did have to get my leaf blower out just for 30 seconds to fix it.
I've
so.
had it happen to me too, so maybe I shouldn't have copied it. But I told my Mason guy I want to copy 72 Random Farms. I swear to God.
Just before you go, you referenced some sort of peer-reviewed studies and some research that you've taken a look at.
I
Has
have
led you-
just a stack that I've gathered, and it's
if
and it's
you-
hard to get through. But I think this is just not the, we need to figure out a format or forum to actually go through the material and really, we're never going to know. I mean, look, there's two sides to every of these arguments, especially when it comes to environmental and emissions issues, of course. But I think we need to weigh those. You need to weigh those, quite frankly. And how do you filter that?
So I think you're exactly right, and I would encourage you to send it to us and to also copy the Sustainability
Yeah,
Advisory Board. I'd just also make the point, a lot of people tonight have disparaged the research that the SAB has done. I have seen it, there are binders of it, and so, it would be good to have the, point counterpoint,
Yeah.
but that research also does exist.
I mean, I guess that's another question on how is that information available as well? I mean, they've obviously spent an enormous amount of time and looking into this. I think I'm disappointed in some of it in that it and this is true of a lot of the research in the environmental field, is it's sort of activist driven and it isn't really scientific. And I think trying to get past that, it's like the Edmunds study. I think many people have mentioned it. And if you really look at the carbon footprint of driving a truck to Alaska or 3,900 miles, that's like on the order of 2.6 metric tons of carbon that are emitted. The leaf blower running for a half hour, and I've tested mine, mine uses about 8 ounces. There are bigger ones, obviously, they use more of fuel, but that's about 2 pounds of carbon. And to start saying that they're the same is it just gets at me, and I think sort of isn't intuitive to a lot of folks, and really starts to create opposition to say, well, hold on, this isn't, maybe we've overplayed our hand on some of that sort of technical detail to say, wow, this is a must-do. I think there's debate on it, and we can sort of get through that.
Well,
Thank you very much.
everybody has the best intentions, and we're trying to reach a compromise.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Frank?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I live on Seven Bridges Road in Chappaqua. I have a piece of property, about an acre. My wife and I and my children have lived here for about 26 years. I take care of my own property. And what we do, my children and I, is we cut the grass, the mower sucks up the clippings, and we toss them into the beds to act as mulch. I do have a machine that's a vacuum that shreds the leaves and bags them. And I will tell you, they make a heck of a lot more dust than any leaf blower that I've ever had. I have a backpack leaf blower, that's the type that the gentleman had discussed with the catalytic converter, and it's a 4-stroke engine, there's no oil-gas mix in it. And it runs fairly clean. It is loud if you're using it, but I will tell you, when my wife is inside the house and we're outside, she can hardly hear it. So I don't know how much the noise thing plays into it. But what I would say is that us doing our gardening, I don't have a problem so much with the bans. I do have a problem with the permanent ban. That's an issue because I've yet to see an electric blower that works as well as a gas. I'm an electrician by trade, and I will tell you, one of the people had spoken about having a 300-foot extension cord. You have a 300-foot extension cord, that leaf blower is not going to blow anything, all right? My driveway is about 125 feet long, and I know a 100-foot cord, which is really the limit of what you should have, isn't going to make it to the ends of the driveway. And when I cut the grass along Seven Bridges Road and the clippings fly into the street, and I go out there with my backpack blower to clean them up, if I had to do it with an electric, it isn't going to happen. All right, so that's an issue. And during the summer months, like I said, I do my own gardening, but I have a landscaper that trims the trees for me and anything up really high that I can't reach. And I had spoken to him, and I said, listen, if I was bringing you in here and you couldn't use the blower, and he said, it's obvious that the costs would go up because you can't, a lot of the stuff is not easily swept. And raking is a non-issue because you're not raking the pavement. You're going to sweep the pavement. And to try and sweep up all little bits of shrubbery or trees that have come down, it's impossible. And the little flakes of wood that come out of the chainsaw, they blow it bing, bing, bing real quick with the blower. Trying to sweep that up is a nightmare. I mean, I think we can all agree that we need something as far as a blower or a vacuum with the leaves, but the summer months is really what I'm more concerned about. And the bigger issue that I have is the exemptions. I've sent a letter, an email to the town and to Rob. I as a citizen have a problem when you create a law and you recognize there's a deficiency in the law and now somebody needs to be exempt. Whether it's a private property owner that has 10 or more acres, whether it's a school, whether it's the parks, because if you're exempting that person, what you're saying is, well, these people are big enough and they have a big enough burden, but I'm not really so concerned about the 1 acre homeowner or the half acre homeowner. And that creates a real problem for me as an individual. All right. And the other thing I wanted to mention too is what was said before about, well, we need to keep the playing fields clean and all that. We're all adults here. We've all been around the block more than once. You can't tell me that you're going to exempt the school district by blowing off the fields, but you're not going to allow them to blow off the grass clippings in the parking lot. And even if you were going to call the cops on the school district, which we know is never going to happen, by the time they get there, oh no, I was using it on the field. I don't know what you're talking about. I never used it in the parking lot. So I think that these are things that need to be looked at. I appreciate your time and allowing me to talk. Have a good night.
Thank you, Frank. Well, you know, what you're saying is important too, because as far as enforcement, if you're actually focusing on the actual blowers that have catalytic converters, then you can actually enforce it by, if you're using a blower that doesn't have a catalytic converter, boom, you're in violation.
No,
So
that's
that's
easy,
actually,
absolutely.
you know, a good point for enforcement too. And it goes to all the enforcement points. So, Dick Goldsmith?
Good evening. I am Dick Goldsmith. I am one of those terrible people on the Sustainability Advisory Board, and I've been on the board for probably about 10 years or more. As was mentioned, we make a lot of efforts to do things to improve the environmental quality of how we live here in town. A lot of work was done in putting this proposal together by a lot of people. And I think it became very obvious tonight that a lot of good ideas were thrown out, which would make us or want us to rethink some of the things that we've been looking at. I do have a question for this gentleman. You said that you've been to a bunch of towns about this particular ordinance. Can you tell us how many towns in Westchester have passed this ordinance?
No town in Westchester has passed an ordinance mandating the use of electric blowers during the summer months.
Okay.
Okay? But I can't enumerate them, but.
But how many
you know,
towns have passed leaf blower ordinances?
Many.
18.
18. Okay, so we're not alone in thinking about this subject.
No.
Okay, so thank you
Plus
from
one.
the SAB.
Plus
I want to
one.
thank you.
Plus one, because Bedford has their recent legislation, which I think everyone should look at. Yeah, I think it's a little unfair on gas blowers, but it actually is it's a new kind of approach. It's a little more, practical. It deals with, it's the first rural town in rural Westchester that has an ordinance restricted
Yeah,
to the
the
village.
Bedford
And
one-
which, as a result, restricts to the village. They're
Yeah,
trying to
just the
balance
village.
both, I guess.
And all the other towns have been passed are very small towns
Yeah.
compared
And it's
to
not-
Newcastle.
You
That's
mean
the
like New
problem.
Rochelle you mentioned?
Yes,
That's
it's
not a
not
small town.
It's a small property.
Anyway, I don't want to argue with here. I just want to say that I'm very glad everybody put a lot of good input in tonight. And hopefully a lot of you will meet with us and we'll get some really good ideas put down and put together. I don't want to discuss them now.
The land size
Thank
of
you.
New Rochelle is 6.65 square miles compared to 23 square miles. Here, you can have this as an extra copy.
My son lives in New Rochelle.
Okay,
New
no.
Rochelle is huge.
Okay, all right, listen, everybody, we're getting a lot of good feedback here, and, I think I could speak for the entire town board that we very much appreciate the work that the Sustainability Advisory Board has done. They have the best intentions, they put a lot of work into it, they are volunteers, and I can't emphasize enough that they have the best intentions to help our environment. And I think I know that many of us, if not all of us, are very concerned about that, and we'll do what we can to make progress on that front. That's the end of the list. I know Victoria, also we have other people? Okay,
So we have 3 more on the list.
okay, so then Steve, I'll put you as number 4.
This gentleman here, Bob, this gentleman here wants to add to.
Okay, what's your name?
My name's Carl.
Well, no, you're not yet, though. I'm just gonna put you, just put you on the list. Just put you on the list, Carl. Sorry. Victoria, you're next. What was your name? Laura? Okay, thank you.
Hello, I'm Victoria Elzapidi. I live at 65 Seven Bridges Road. Nice to meet you, Frank. We're neighbors. So I guess I just want to, first of all, I'm very compelled by the passion around this on many different levels. I want to kind of bring us down to earth maybe a little bit. I feel like the landscaping conversation is up here, the gas versus electric leaf blowers over here. There's a lot of kind of overarching themes. And I guess, as I was sitting back there, I'm kind of feeling what originally brought me to this topic, which is just sitting in my backyard and loving kind of the nature that I moved to here and hearing, almost constant sound of leaf blowers, because every day one of my neighbors nearby has their landscaping folks come. So it's not like there's one day a week or in the morning one week, but pretty much every single day, whether it's a weekday or a weekend, there's a large amount of noise that I hear. And whether it's coming from landscapers or someone with a private leaf blower, it just feels like the peaceful enjoyment of our homes, our properties, is a big piece of this. And I just want to bring us, the board, the neighbors, the landscapers, down to that level that really, a lot of this is about that, our enjoyment of our homes, our enjoyment of our healthy environment. And I guess, as I'm listening to the conversation about the power of the leaf blowers, it feels almost like we live in an industrial park. Like, wow, we really have to attack back at these, horrible clippings and all of these leaves that are falling. And, it's kind of like an army against these nature that we're fighting against. And I guess, as we kind of have this conversation moving forward, I'm hoping that we can really bring kind of an educational component into this. Because I know, I grew up in the city, I did not grow up in a house. This is the first house I've owned, and, I came here, kind of learned that everyone was using these landscapers, and suddenly, quickly started learning about, do I need to even have a leaf blower? And I have to tell kind of everyone here, one of the happiest decisions we've made since we moved here is asking our landscaper, small-scale guy who actually, he works with a lot of properties around our neighborhood, and said, please stop using the leaf blower. We want you to continue mowing, maybe even reducing that maybe every couple of weeks, because the lawn is healthier if it's not mowed every single week. But can you please stop? And he was, I have to, turn around to the landscapers, he was totally fine to do that. And it didn't affect the charges at all. We have an acre. I know maybe, some people have bigger properties, but it's not caused any tension with our landscaper. If anything, they're spending less time on our property now. And, honestly, in all the years we've been doing this, I haven't ever had an issue with, a large number of clippings. And I do clip, I prune, I'm a gardener myself. So I'd just like us to kind of think about, what would it look like if we don't use leaf blowers? And I'm not saying whether we ban them or not, but what are we really fighting against? And, what maybe are alternatives to thinking about the impact? It sounds like a lot of you have gone to maybe some of the same workshops I've gone to or learned about this topic. But really, do we need to have everything so perfectly neat? And I guess that brings me to my last point, which is around, the nature aspect. I mean, we're talking about the hearing loss possibilities, we're talking decibels, we're talking about, climate change and air quality. But it's also a bit about land and habitat. I mean, we live in the woods, and so if we're constantly blowing the edges of our properties, there are little, creatures that live there, and little, insects that are beneficial, that pollinate. There are ground nesting bees that if we didn't have them, we wouldn't have any pollination. And if we're constantly blowing them literally to bits, because the pressure is so high, it kills a lot of these little creatures. So I want us to keep that in mind too, because that's part of a healthy ecosystem. So I guess I just finally end with, as we're thinking about who's at the table, we have landscapers, which is fortunate, joining us. Maybe we want to bring some, doctors, pulmonologists, maybe some horticulturalists who really focus on healthy gardening practices.
You have an organic gardener and
organic
horticulturalist and an arborist.
Yeah, that's great.
I think there's a lot of education sitting in those two roles.
Yeah, that's why I'm being very respectful and saying, great, because they're part of the conversation. But please, let's think about
over here.
whatever is implemented, that maybe there's a lot of education. Sometimes it's a shock to the system to say, go from 0 to 100. If we can think about educating and what components are important to learn, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Hi, Jim McCauley. Lived in town for 40-plus years, and most of you know me. I do some volunteering also, not just in town, but in some other areas. I guess I'd like to say a couple things. One, when I first started to hear about this and read about it, I was a little concerned. And then when I found out that it's already been considered and is proposed legislation, I said, where did this come from? And what I'm hearing here tonight is that I'm not so sure that the board and or the committee, who are all volunteers, and so are all of you, in essence, okay? You get paid a few bucks, but not enough to, to pay for a leaf blower. However, or the electricity for the leaf blower. However, this legislation seems absolutely premature. I see it as a tax increase. One of the committees you asked me to be on, and I was an alternate, was the mandate committee to unearth and fight state mandates. I did it, with others, with Judy in the room and others, did close to a decade of work on the school mandates and the costs. This is a tax increase for every one of your constituents. Every single one of us. I don't care if you got a big property or small property. If you live in a condo, you don't live in a condo. I don't think we have any real apartment buildings, but even small renters. I think it's of a magnitude based on the little information, and I'm a homeowner. I live on a 1 acre property. It happens to be a condo, but about half of it, my costs are going to go up. I owned a 2 acre property for many, many years. Those costs, and from what I'm hearing, the costs would close to double. That is a tax increase. Given what we're all facing, that has to be considered. I would strongly recommend that you, I don't know what the right term is, but you take a break, you go back and study this, give it time, don't vote on anything, don't propose legislation, listen to both sides, because it doesn't sound like that has happened yet. You got one view, and I know they're all volunteers, and I know they're all good intentions, and I know yours are. But it doesn't seem from someone who's hearing this for not just learning about it, but hearing both sides of the issue for the first time, that enough study hasn't been done. And it is a mandate. I look at it that way. Now, I may have a particular point of view on government, et cetera, but I wish you would give it and actually make it a referendum. If it's another year, the change in the environment in Chappaqua because of leaf blowers is not going to make a whit of difference. It's going to be immeasurable over what supposedly is the purpose. I understand that, and I understand that change has to start at a local level. But also, there's other issues involved here. There's a very small minority of people who are proposing this. Very few people in the town, maybe this group and a few others who have left, are really aware, and there's a few others who write. But the vast majority of the town and the taxpayers are not aware of it. And I think it's your obligation as elected officials to make sure that everyone is aware of it and give them a choice as to whether it goes in. Same thing I would have much preferred, and I didn't know it was coming either. And I've been involved. You know I've been involved for the last decade with all of you in one way or another. That just came out of the blue, the power thing.
Right.
We deserve that. And that's what I think you should do. I'm not saying don't do anything. I don't like the noise either. You know, I don't like it when I have to hear it from neighbors or my own guys, okay? And they do it. But, and it does sound like the technology is coming. Do we have, another question I think should be asked is, do we at a town level have the expertise and have done the studies that are scientific and accepted by both sides on decibel levels, on energy use for each individual machine that's used? I think these things have to be considered. So I say take a rest, study it, have both sides study it. I think Holler's idea was great, and I would volunteer to be on something like that next year. Thank you.
Well, let me just, in fairness to your comment, we've received a ton of emails from people, and everybody that's here tonight, and our first hearing, there weren't a lot of people there. But tonight there are, but we've received a ton of emails. I'm not gonna say everybody in town knows about it, but we've received more emails on this issue, and I've been on the board for 5 years, than any other issue, including the plastic bags, and even, chickens. No, this issue has been by far the most controversial. I'm not talking about Chaplin Crossing, but as far as sustainability. And we haven't made any changes to the legislation based on all the comments yet. And it's not to say we're not going to, it's just we haven't taken that step yet. We're still listening to the comments. So, again, I just don't want anybody to think that, like, we're only hearing one side. We're not. We're actually hearing all the sides, and this legislation is going to change.
I gotta tell you, for me personally, it's been so important that so many homeowners have made the effort to come to the public meeting and show your face and to stand up and talk and actually kind of come out in force. Sometimes when you're working on something and people might send an email, or sometimes people cut and paste and it looks like one of those mass emails rather than individual stories, to actually also make the extra effort to come to town hall to sort of express your opinion and hear the dialogue that's happening on both sides, I think has been one of the more powerful meetings in terms of educating my perspective. And I hope that in the end, though all of us as a town, because I think we all do care about the environment and want to make it better, not just for our children, but just because it's, you know, a sustainable world is something that all generations can benefit from. But I think that if we do this smart, we can make some change that's going to satisfy the intentions of everybody, that's going to get to the end point. And I think that, I don't want to call it a living law because the lawyer probably would hate it, but I think there probably can be put something in place where there are checkpoints, that as technology evolves and as certain things evolve, the actual underpinnings of what makes the law work can be revisited automatically. So I'm really glad that everybody showed up. I mean, I really am grateful to all of the residents. I'm grateful to the work of the Sustainability Advisory Board. This is a topic that was important, and obviously not every issue can sail through, but I really feel like this has been one of the best conversations I've had since I've been on the town board, and I'm really grateful, really grateful. So thank you.
You clapping? No. I think I saw you clap. Yvonne.
Way to go home.
Yvonne Dunn.
I've never been to one of these before. So my name is Yvonne Dunn. I'm over on Cowden Lane.
How fun are they, by the way?
Right? My kids are like, where are you?
We're watching on TV.
And I want to say thank you to the town and to the SAB for looking out for our health and safety. I have friends on the SAB board that I have a tremendous amount of respect for. And in that thought, my thinking is, can we please consider bringing in a tick expert? I think the spread of ticks and Lyme disease is a huge health concern. And in looking at what we're looking at now with leaves and cutting a knot and blowing a knot, a tick expert might have some valuable information as well. And that's it. Thanks.
This, you know, to talk about the value of the public hearing, I mean, this is the first I've heard about this whole tick issue. I mean, not the tick issue in general, but in regard to this, in this context. So it's a learning experience for us as well. So Steve Woke. Steve is the chair of the Sustainability Advisory Board. So if you really want to be mad at somebody.
I was gonna say that, if you got tomatoes.
Right, there you go.
I'm the one.
Organic tomatoes.
Steve, just stand over there, please. They don't have good aim, I can tell that right now.
So Judy, I want to agree with you. You're right, we shouldn't be compared to Irvington. Because Irvington is much less land and a lot of people and much less land. On a per capita basis, the people in Newcastle use a lot more carbon. So yeah, we shouldn't be compared to Irvington. I'd like to read something, and I'm not going to read anything out of context. This came, surprisingly, about 2 days ago, maybe 3 days ago, from a landscaper. And subsequently, I called them up to kind of verify this information and find out a little bit more. The landscaper is called Mo Green. He's in Fairfield, Connecticut, Mo Green LLC. Hi, I was just out electrically mulch mowing and blowing and raking and tarping, in parentheses, and hauling some with Prius and aluminum trailer, all weekend. Very low carbon footprint and noise. We are in Katona, Pound Ridge, Rye, Rybrook, and many towns in Connecticut, and perhaps sometime soon Newcastle. We take care of 40 to 50 acres a week and use no gas. Battery-powered sprayers, chainsaws, mowers, blowers, trimmers, hedgers, aerators, dethatchers. It's possible, and we are proof. We avoided 500 tons of carbon/greenhouse gases this year and have grown at 40% per year for 3 years straight. I applaud the effort and hope to support in any way possible. Best regards and thanks. So, point being, you know, there's a bunch of landscapers out here. Talk to this guy. get even a little bit more education. This stuff is all doable. On an individual basis, it is all doable. We don't, as Ivy, as you didn't just imply, but in fact said, we don't have time to wait a year or to wait 2 years. This stuff is happening now. And, you know, we could talk about education and let's educate and let's think it through, and we could do that for another 6 months or another year or another 2 years. Unfortunately, as with texting, as you mentioned, Jeremy, and with the smoking bans in certain places, so we can protect ourselves and protect our children, unfortunately, education doesn't just work. And as Rob, as you said, we share this air. We share this planet. It's all of us. We ask our elected representatives to help us share this air in the proper way. So I'm going to ask you to do something very Republican. Take personal responsibility of what you are admitting. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for your
Do you
efforts.
use that gardener on your property?
Okay. Next person to speak is Carl.
I think I'm the last person, aren't I?
Nope, you are not, Carl.
Hi, my name's Carl Cavagnolo. I live over on Taylor Road. And when I first heard about the ordinance that was being proposed, I understand that I have a responsibility to be a good steward to the world, to your children, to my children's children, to the future of the world. And I try to be this type of individual. The thing that concerns, what I am is I'm an organic gardener. I take care of my property, I use only organic fertilizers, I mulch, I use a lot of compost, I use all of these things, and I try to do good on the property that I own. But part of trying to do that good is sometimes needing to use a tool that falls out of favor in this conversation. And sometimes you just need little spurts of something that isn't perhaps in vogue or something that's being looked at awkwardly in order to try to do a greater good. And that's the balancing act that I'm trying to balance that in my own mind. So the first thing I thought about was, forget it. I'll give up the blower and I'll buy a tractor and I'll do everything with a tractor. And then I said, oh, this is insane to do this, right? So what I'm saying is that there may be some rationale to give the opportunity to people to use, with discretion, these tools that allow you to do a greater good while still not being perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura Fox. I live at 48 Whippoorwill Lake Road, and I fully, totally support this ban and every aspect of it. And thank you for all of your work. I think this is a quality of life issue. It's a health issue and it's an environmental issue. And I agree with you 100%. We don't have the time. We have to act now. I'd like to say to the landscapers, I have 2.5 acres. I do it myself. I have not used a leaf blower for 15 years. It is not necessary. Not necessary. I hire a bunch of guys from Neighbors Link. I bought 6 rakes. I put them to work. I buy them a chicken sandwich. They're very happy. We're all very happy. This is a quality of life issue. I understand you do what you do, you have to make a living, but we all have to breathe the air. And it's a quality of life issue. I moved here to enjoy nature, to enjoy the quiet. I don't have that on any day ever. It doesn't happen. I walk into our beautiful town parks. I hear leaf blowers there. The noise carries. It is not a sustainable way of life for any of us. I don't know if any of the landscapers saw this from the American Academy of Pediatrics, but you really need to read this. This is a health crisis. I think I covered everything. Thank you again.
Thank you. Can I comment?
Sure.
When can you bring labor from Neighbors
Hey,
Link?
Peter, can you come up to the mic
Sure.
so that?
My name is Peter DeLuca. Labor from Neighbors Link, they're illegal, undocumented workers.
we don't need to, we don't need to get into that issue, okay? We don't need,
But
that's not
us
the
as,
issue.
us as landscapers can't hire
Okay,
them. We're
all right.
subject to a $20,000 fine.
That's not my problem. My problem is
All right, all right. Listen, come on, we got, it's 5 to 11, we don't need to discuss that issue.
You know what? I don't know.
Cheryl, Manise?
Excuse me, that's real part of the issue.
Okay.
I have a neighbor that when she heard about this, what she
Okay.
did, she hired them.
Sir, do you want to go on the list and speak? I'll put your name down.
No, you did.
Didn't I?
You did.
Well.
My
Okay.
name is Bill Drucker.
Okay, wait, Bill, it's not your turn. Cheryl, you're next.
He'll put you on the list.
Fine.
But I'm not, go ahead, Cheryl, I'm sorry. Let's try to keep the focus on leaf blowers.
Full disclosure, I'm Rand's wife, and we do a lot for the town. Rand and I love living here, and we volunteer, we make sure our kids do. This is where we live. And I am so proud of him because what he's bringing here is a devotion to our town and to our children. And guess what? To our children's children. Because you know what? They deserve what we have. And Ivy is right. We don't have time anymore. When you take a look at the Sierra Club, when you take a look at all of those other environmental groups that are renowned, they say the same thing. And you know what they say? We only have 12 years left. That's it, kiddo. We have to be bold. And you know what? If we're somewhat inconvenienced in our little plot of land, in our little town, so be it. Because the oceans and the fish and the Arctic and the land needs to be saved. And guess what, people? It is within our power to do that. And it's not big. It's little. And you know what? We have the power to do it. So let's come together. I'm totally into, if we can make a compromise, let's make a compromise. But I agree with Rob, and I agree with everybody here, and I'm sorry, I agree with Rand. We need to be bold, and we can do it so that it's good for everybody. That's it.
Right. Thank you, Cheryl. And by the way, let me add one quick thing. If we change the legislation, it's not a knock on anybody's work. It's a public hearing, and we're getting feedback. And I think Jeremy's right. Change is coming. And the question is, what's to change? And we're listening to the public comment. And this legislation is 100% going to change. And it's not because we're going to make it weaker. We're going to just try to make it better and more in tune with the industry. And you know, that's it. It's not a question. This is not change for it to weaken it. This is change to make it better and more accepted, because we all have the same goal. At least the ones sitting up here have the same goal, and many people in the audience, which is to make a difference in the environment and to set an example for our other communities and for our kids. So, sir, you want to come up and now talk about undocumented aliens, or is that the issue now?
You know what,
Bill, you have to come to the microphone.
Okay, terrific,
so-
you're going to pass. Does anybody else have any public comments on the leaf blower? Come on up.
Hi, Kathy Schreiber. I'm a Newcastle resident, 22 years, and I am also a member of the Sustainability Advisory Board. When I was brought on the Sustainability Advisory Board, there have been some discussions about the environmental goals. However, I do not have any environmental training. I am a business major, and I was brought in because I do some project management in my full-time job. So I am not, as they would say, a tree hugger. I did work on the leaf blower initiative. I was sort of indifferent to whether or not this was necessary to work on. We are very busy. We have a lot of things we are doing, especially in relation to recycling and solid waste management, which is, again, not really focusing on necessarily the environment, but on saving the town money and, by extension, the residents. So, but one of the things we started to do was look at all of the legislation of, across all the towns, and it was incredibly painful, going through E-code and to look and document and put in a chart all of what was done at the other towns. So this is how this started, as we looked at what everybody else was doing, and then we said, okay, well, what would be appropriate for our town? So, you know, we've had proposals. Some of the original formulation of the ordinance has changed after some review, and I expect it will have further change after tonight. So I really do appreciate all of the feedback from everybody. I will say, versus transparency, we have been working on this issue for about 18 months. It was talked about on Facebook many, many times. We have a website. It's been on the website. We promoted it on Facebook. It was in an article in Inside Chappaqua. So it's out there. It is very difficult to get information out to people. You know that because people forget that they get a mailing about when their garbage is picked up and when the holidays are. They just stop looking at stuff. So, but it is our intent on the Sustainability Advisory Board to be transparent, to inform, to educate, and we have a website, newcastlesab.org. So I will just leave with this saying there is this issue has been brought to the town board before. And then there's some notes here from an old minutes where Ms. Patsy Kuntz, I don't know if anybody knows Patsy, where she stated that it is more than noise pollution. It is also dust and air pollution. A leaf blower takes off topsoil, blows mulch away. Ms. Kuntz has investigated the ordinance in several towns, would like to ban leaf blowers from May 15th to September 30th. Scarsdale has done this since 1994. And I will just put an aside here, there's been some issues or discussions about our property and our property values. I know the ban is different from Scarsdale, but it has been implemented, a ban has been implemented for an awfully long time, and I don't believe their property values have been damaged. So again, Scarsdale has done this since 1994, from the town board work session meeting May 1st, 2000. So my child was born a few months after that, so it just shows you that 18 years ago and counting, this type of legislation has been through the board, and no one has had the courage to go forward. So I appreciate your efforts to have gotten this far, and we'll see how this comes out on December 4th, you know, what more information we can put together for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Anybody else before we adjourn the public hearing? Come on up.
My name is Antoine van Horen. I live in Old Roaringbrook Road. And I want to say thank you for organizing this, because I think it's really valuable that we have a fruitful conversation. I think it's even more valuable that we have some fact-finding, because one of the things that triggered me to come here was that there was a very concrete proposal that was quite extreme in its wording, with a complete ban. And that was number one. And number two is when I was here and I watched the presentation of the advisory committee, I realized that despite all the very good work that is being done, I think there is a lot of lack of depth in the fact-finding that we should be able to find here. And I don't know what the right answer is, whether the right answer is to speak with a lot of people. I've heard several people here that are very knowledgeable. I am not. another alternative could be to hire a professional consultant to support the committee in its work to get more of the right facts up, because a lot of the presentation, at least the first half, not when it came to our neighboring villages, the first half sounded very familiar after looking at Google for 10 minutes and see what kind of things pop up and people repeating each other. I think if we have true depth in the facts, if we know what we're doing, we take the right decision and we can move forward knowing that we're doing the right thing for the environment rather than guessing we're doing the right thing with the environment. Because I think for a lot of people, at least for me, that is now the case. I think I'm more guessing than knowing. But I would really like to know we are doing the right thing, and whether that is banning leaf blowers or regulating leaf blowers or regulating all equipment that have, small gas engines that produce the same kind of stuff, air and CO2 and NOx and dust and whatnot, because there are 10 different machines that these gentlemen use, and myself, when I work in my yard, that all produce the same stuff. And if they would all have a catalytic converter, if they would all have a muffler, if they would all be four-stroke, we would do way more for the environment than just banning a few leaf blowers. But that's my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you.
Young man, did you want to say something? Young man.
I want to say it.
I'm so old.
I'm, as you know, you can see by my shirt, Peter DeLuca. I'm with Organic Landscapes too.
Can't hear you.
Peter DeLuca. I'm
To the mic.
yeah,
the
yeah.
mic.
I can't hear you, sorry.
Yeah, not a problem. Peter DeLuca with Organic Landscapes too. We've been my dad's company, my company. We've been making compost piles with leaves since my dad started back in his first job. I worked as 1983. I worked as a kid with my dad from summers since middle school. I cared more about the environment. I trained my guys. A lot of things, like, I don't know if you guys have a noise ordinance that was mentioned. I think that's something we should really talk about, because I see guys working at 7, 8 o'clock at night. I don't blame you. I wouldn't want to hear that noise at that time. I would want to eat my dinner. Just like you guys.
Waiting for the sandwich.
Yeah, yeah. But I think the thing is to do is, I think we should, like people say, through compromise, but I really think we shouldn't actually go after there's a lot of, like, the EPA and check like the one gentleman brought up the mufflers and just check that they're new equipment. I think we should enforce that really, because I work really hard. A lot of people in this industry work really long hours, really hard, and we really do care about the environment. A lot of loose term is everybody says a landscaper, but some of the times you hear the noise. What about pool guys when they close pools this time of year? They use those pumps and the generators. They make noise. They pollute too. It's not always the landscaper that we get blamed for it. And I think we should just talk and sit down and try to work it out. It's just a little frustrating as a young generation person that it's always the landscaper's fault, and it's just, that's my opinion.
We don't blame the landscape, we blame the SAP.
I'm just saying.
Thank you.
All right. On that note, thank you. On that note, we are going to
Call for a vote?
We're going to adjourn.
Going to call for a vote to adjourn
I move to adjourn.
public hearing.
December 4th?
Yes.
So,
I will second it. All in favor?
we
Aye.
need to pick a date that we're adjourning it to.
December
4th.
4th.
Okay.
At
We're going to workshop
8
it.
p.m. or as soon thereafter as is
Right.
called
Do you
on the
wanna-
agenda at 200 South
We
Berlin.
could workshop it.
Do you want to take and
Next
do
week.
a workshop next week?
Yeah.
Do you want
I think
to
if we need to,
to speak to the SAP?
I think we should really have a conversation about,
Next steps?
I think the right mix of people to be in the room, because I think there can probably be a meeting of the minds.
Well, let's,
I think it might be helpful, potentially, before we have our next meeting, is to get some of this information make, at least initially, some changes to the legislation
Yeah.
and then be able to come back and have people comment on the proposed change legislation,
Right.
given new facts and information we've heard
Right, so we
today
would-
and in the last, few weeks.
Right, so we were thinking that November 20th would be the date for you to give us direction on what that new draft might look like.
Okay,
Okay,
Does that sound like that would work?
yes.
yes.
Okay.
So
And
we're
if
gonna,
not, we
we're
will-
gonna have this lively conversation amongst ourselves on the board, and then whatever that conversation turns into be
So-
legislation
Well,
that
the-
more people will
Can
come
we
back.
resolve next week as to what date we want to set the public hearing?
No, we have to do it in a, we'll set
Well,
the
we
year.
would do it at a public hearing. I mean, it's perfectly,
Yeah, you could say December 4th, and if that changes on December 4th, I'm sorry, I was holding it down. On December 4th, you come back, you make an announcement, you publish it, you inform everyone before December 4th so that nobody comes that,
unnecessarily, right?
Yes, December 4th, it's adjourned for additional time.
We're gonna
Okay.
workshop it we'll put it on the agenda for the 20th for us
It'll
to
be
discuss.
on the agenda for the 20th.
Okay, great.
Just for discussion, but everyone will be informed about upcoming dates.
Got it. So I think we already did the vote, right? December 4th, we had a second, all in favor? Aye.
Can we
Okay,
take a 5-minute break?
terrific. Great. Yes, of course. Yeah. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Will it take us 2 seconds to finish?
The moratorium public hearing.
All right, so we're back.
The 20th.
So lonely.
Ran?
Yeah, thank you, Ran. for everything.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Always would listen, always will listen, continue to listen, thank you.
All right, so,
We're on to
we're gonna open,
resolutions?
we have to open the hearing
Yes,
first.
have to
I
open the
make a
hearing.
motion to open the public hearing regarding a proposed local law enacting a moratorium for the Chappaqua business handlers.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna assume there's no public comment because nobody's here.
Oh,
No offense, Mark.
fair weather fans, a bunch of fair weather friends these people are.
Do you want to
Nobody-
talk to
it's
the board
but the
about the
press.
3 comments from the planning board and we'll
Uh,
incorporate
talks
those?
about
We talked about it, right?
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
so
Make it
publicly.
quick, go.
Yeah,
Just,
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow! Come on!
I can't find it now.
All right, I think we're gonna, what we'll do is, the planning board has submitted some comments, we are going to adopt the recommended changes, which are the following.
Got him?
Yes, got it.
Real quick, yeah.
The
Get on the
planning
record.
board's first comment was that they recommended that the reference to young people and older adults be brought into the changing needs of the community. So we'll change it to incorporate that language. The second comment was that they recommend that the phrase race of diligence be deleted so that the sentence reads as follows: this moratorium will promote community planning values by regulating land development based on carefully considered plans and prevent those seeking to obtain approvals before new conditions and requirements are established. The planning board also made a third comment about considering giving a 1-month advance notice. However, in order to extend the moratorium, it has to go through the local law process, so we don't need to incorporate any new language. We will just follow the law to properly extend the moratorium if that happens.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Great.
So moving,
Now, Holly, are you gonna make a motion to adjourn it?
I'm gonna so I make a motion to adjourn the public hearing until November 20th at 8 PM, or as soon as realistically possible thereafter, at Town Hall.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so, that's it. We move on to our resolutions.
I resolve. I'm sorry, I'm jumping in front of you. I move to provide program funding for 2018, the amount of $2,000 to the Chappaqua Millwood Chamber of Commerce in accordance with the letter submitted dated May 11, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to accept a proposal dated October 7, 2018 from the Christmas Lighting Company, 228 East, Route 59, Suite 104, Nanuet, New York, 10954, in the amount of $10,500 for lights and trees at the corner of King Street and Bedford Road, and 2 trees and hedges in the triangle.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to sign the 2019 agreement with the Town of Newcastle and Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals in Westchester for a total of $6,436.02 payable in monthly installments of $1,072.67 beginning January 1st, 2019 up until June 30th, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to accept the following monthly reports for October 2018, town clerk, court clerk, building department, and receiver of
Okay,
taxes.
stop, because you're
That's
giving me a
good.
headache.
It's great.
No, I'm like
It's
that
the
car.
best thing he's
Remember
ever
those small
done.
car commercials,
Second.
those mini cars? You're like, guy was so special.
Aye.
All
Aye.
in favor? Wait, you gotta wait for me to say all in favor. All in
Aye.
favor, aye.
I move to approve the payment of claims in the amount, Lisa, of $207.30, see, I can't do it slowly.
You can't do this fast.
$377.25 listed on the summary pre-check writing report and detailed voucher detail report, each prepared on November 13, 2018. Checks will be issued and mailed to each claimant listed on Wednesday, November 14, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
And I've done
Aye.
good things before. That was-
I move to appoint Michael Wolfenson
It
to
was
a
messing with
3-year term on the Recreation and Park Commission to
messing around. We're gonna move
fill
on this.
Suzanne Lodge's unexpired term effective November 13th, 2018 until November 12th, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to appoint Adam Glick to a 5-year term on the Recreation and Park Commission to fill John Strauss's unexpired term effective November 13th, 2018 until November 12th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The other term
And-
doesn't end until January 1st,
Right.
right?
And,
No,
right.
it doesn't end until January 1st.
Oh,
yeah.
that's right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Organizational list.
All in favor?
I abstain.